Chapter 340. Situ Xing and Fang Hua were both old foxes of the Guanzhong torture room. If they did not provoke Chu Xiu would not move against them. Otherwise, if he really killed everyone, who would work for him? But Chu Xiu could not be at ease using these two people. His own people had to occupy the majority. Chu Xiu said gravely, "The prefectures that were previously in Wei Changling's hands are now under Yang Ling's jurisdiction." It could be said that Yang Ling had put in a lot of effort in this matter and also proved his loyalty to Chu Xiu. This prefecture was what Yang Ling deserved. Although Yang Ling's strength was not great, he was clever and capable. He had been at Wei Zheduan's beck and call for so many years to help him deal with some chores. Everything was done in an orderly manner. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to stay by Wei Zheduan's side for so long. Hearing this, Yang Ling immediately stood up and bowed to Chu Xiu. "Thank you, official." His thanks were sincere. From this, it was possible to see the difference between Chu Xiu and Wei Zheduan. In the past, he had followed Wei Zheduan for so many years, but Wei Zheduan only promised him a pile of empty promises and nothing practical. Even Wei Zheduan's famous dragon-chasing hand, until his death, he did not pass any to Yang Ling. After following Chu Xiu, he managed to obtain 2 prefectures in succession. Although it was a little dangerous, the benefits he gained were huge. Chu Xiu continued. "Jiang Taoran temporarily cannot be the inspector. The 2 prefectures under his command will be separated and managed by the Ghost Hand King and Du Guangzhong." The Ghost Hand King and Du Guangzhong had always been the ones who dealt with the most matters under Chu Xiu's command. While these 2 were not the strongest in martial arts, their overall abilities were the highest. Also, Tang Ye will take the position of Jianzhou's inspector. Among Chu Xiu's subordinates, Tang Ye and Yan Bugui's strength were basically the strongest. However, Chu Xiu could feel that Tang Ye's strength should not be limited to just this much. He was hiding his true strength, and he had not used his trump card yet. Chu Xiu didn't have the habit of prying into other people's privacy. With Tang Ye's strength, he was worthy of this position. Logically speaking, Yan Bugui's strength was more than enough to be an inspector. He was currently in seclusion, and once he came out, he would be an expert in the 3-flower realm. But with Yan Bugui's personality, he could kill people, but he could forget about being a patrol inspector. After all the rewards were given, there were 6 inspectors in the entire Guanxi area, and 4 of them were Chu Xiu's trusted subordinates. Compared to Wei Zheduan, the current Chu Xiu could be considered to have real control over the entire Guanxi area. Chu Xiu looked around at the people around him and said in a cold tone, "Right now, the Guanxi area is facing internal and external troubles. I've said before that to deal with external problems, we must first settle the internal problems. Now that the internal problems have been solved, it's time to deal with the external problems. For the next few days, sort out the forces in your hands, and finally, gather together and solve all the problems in one go." Everyone present was shocked. If the Guanxi area wanted true peace, there would probably be a lot of killing. Chu Xiu's actions in the Punishment Hall branch had no impact on the martial arts forces in the Guanxi area. These were all internal adjustments of the Guanxi branch, and it did not involve the Jianghu forces. Therefore, in the eyes of the Zhang family and the other Jianghu forces, during this period of time, Chu Xiu should be stabilizing his strength and working hard to digest the power of Wei Zheduan, the former Punishment Hall master. He should not cause trouble for them for the time being. Therefore, after a few days, the Zhang family began to prepare for the 188th birthday of the Zhang family's great ancestor, Zhang Wanshan. In the Jianghu, generally, except for the older or highly respected Jianghu seniors, the martial artists of some sects and aristocratic families actually rarely celebrated their birthdays. Martial artists who had reached the oneness of heaven and man realm had a lifespan of 200 years. If they celebrated every birthday, what would it be like? It was as if they were deliberately asking others for birthday gifts. Therefore, most martial artists would only hold a birthday celebration when their lifespan was almost up, but they still had a certain amount of combat power. This year, Zhang Wanshan happened to be 188 years old, which was an auspicious number. In addition, he was not so old that his qi and blood had completely declined to the point that he could not fight anymore. Therefore, it was very normal to hold a birthday celebration. Of course, part of the reason why the Zhang family held this birthday celebration was because they were forced by Chu Xiu. Previously, when Chu Xiu was promoted to the punishment hall master, the Zhang family kept a low profile and did not dare to cause trouble again. This caused the Zhang family's prestige to plummet. This time, the Zhang family held a birthday celebration and invited all the Jianghu forces in Guanxi. They wanted to show them that although the Zhang family had retreated in front of Chu Xiu, it was also because of Chu Xiu's identity. The Zhang family was not worried about Chu Xiu, but the Guanzhong torture room. Now that the Wei family had been destroyed, the Zhang family had become the #1 clan in Guanxi in name and in reality. The Zhang family could admit defeat and retreat in front of Chu Xiu, but compared to the other Jianghu forces in Guanxi, they could only look up to them. 3 days later, it was the time when Zhang Wanshan's birthday celebration officially began. Jiuyuan Prefecture was bustling with people from the martial arts world who came to attend Zhang Wanshan's birthday celebration. The Wei family had been destroyed, and the Zhang family was now the strongest Jianghu force in Guanxi. Since the Zhang family had personally sent out an invitation, no Jianghu force in Guanxi dared to refuse. As for the rest of the rogue martial artists, most of them were there to watch the fun. Of course, there were also some who wanted to mingle with the crowd and make some connections. At this time, in a restaurant in the east of Jiuyuan Prefecture, a young martial artist who was less than 20 years old was playing with a wine glass with a bored look on his face. Although this young man was less than 20 years old, he already had the cultivation of the innate realm. Even in the Jianghu, reaching this level at this age was considered fast. A middle-aged man in the physical invulnerability realm beside him frowned and said, "Young master, the patriarch's birthday celebration is about to begin at noon. Aren't you going back now? Has the patriarch's birthday gift been prepared?" This young man was the most favored disciple of the Zhang family's younger generation, Zhang Donglai. He was not a descendant of Zhang Kun's, but his talent was the most outstanding. Zhang Wanshan had liked him since he was young. When he was young, when the other young disciples of the Zhang family trembled in front of Zhang Wanshan and did not dare to speak, he was the only one who could sit on Zhang Wanshan's lap and call out to the patriarch like a spoiled child. As Zhang Donglai grew older, his talent became more and more outstanding. Although he was a little lazy and hedonistic, Zhang Wanshan was extremely satisfied with him. In fact, if he was not afraid that the family head, Zhang Kun's, would be displeased, Zhang Wanshan would have made Zhang Donglai the successor of the family head. When he heard the middle-aged martial artist's words, Zhang Donglai said lazily, "What's the rush? Even if I go after the birthday celebration, the patriarch will not reprimand me." Seeing Zhang Donglai's lazy look, the middle-aged martial artist could not help but say anxiously, "Young master, the other young masters are racking their brains to give the patriarch a satisfactory gift to win his favor. If you take your time here, what if the others steal the limelight?" Zhang Donglai said disdainfully, "Just based on those few pieces of trash, they want to steal my limelight? Uncle Kun, don't worry. Even if I don't give anything, the patriarch will still dote on me the most." Seeing that Uncle Kun still wanted to nag, Zhang Donglai hurriedly said, "All right, Uncle Kun, don't say any more. I already have an idea for a birthday gift. The Lingzhou Prefecture's Chen family recently obtained a cold jade dagger. I heard that they are preparing to offer it to the patriarch in exchange for our Zhang family support. I intend to ask for that cold jade dagger as a congratulatory gift to the patriarch." Uncle Kun hesitated and said, "But young master, that cold jade dagger is very precious. The Chen family still wants to use this opportunity to show off. Will they give it to you?" Zhang Donglai sneered and said, "Won't give? If the Chen family doesn't give, I just need to say a few bad words in front of the patriarch and the Chen family will suffer the consequences. I want to see whether the cold jade dagger is more important in the patriarch's heart, or I, Zhang Donglai, am more important in front of the patriarch. If the Chen family knows their place, I don't mind putting in a few good words for them afterwards. Otherwise, I will have the Chen family give this gift for nothing. At this time, a clapping sound came from downstairs. Tang Ye clapped his hands and sighed, "Young Master Zhang really knows how to play. You snatched someone else's gift for your ancestor and gave it to him as your own. Is this what you call offering Buddha with borrowed flowers? No, it is more like offering Patriarch with borrowed flowers. That old thing, Zhang Wanshan, is not qualified to become Buddha." Hearing this, Uncle Kuan and Zhang Donglai's expressions changed. Zhang Donglai shouted, "How dare you? Who are you?" Tang Ye said slowly, "I am Tang Ye, the new Jianghu prefecture's inspector. Coincidentally, my master is also preparing to attend Zhang Wanshan's birthday banquet, so I came to borrow something from young Master Zhang as a gift." Uncle Kuan's expression suddenly changed. Of course he knew who Tang Ye was. That was a vicious dog under Chu Xiu, and a terrifyingly powerful one at that. Wei Chongling had died at his hands. But Zhang Donglai did not react. He subconsciously asked, "What do you want to borrow?" Tang Ye still had a lazy smile on his face, but his words were hair-raising. "I want to borrow young Master Zhang's head as a gift." "Young Master, run." Uncle Kuan immediately acted. He pulled Zhang Donglai and tried to escape. Unfortunately, in front of Tang Ye's speed, it was a joke for them to escape. The two dragon-tail soul-chasing darts flashed in a strange arc as they slashed towards Uncle Kuan, instantly tearing apart his protective aura. Uncle Kuan used almost all his strength to chop off the two dragon-tail soul-chasing darts. But before he could heave a sigh of relief, his figure suddenly stopped moving while a wisp of disbelief appeared in his eyes. A dragon-tail soul-chasing dart had pierced through his back without him noticing. Tang Ye's figure moved and appeared in front of Zhang Donglai in an instant. Zhang Donglai's eyes flashed with terror. He shouted, "Don't kill me. I am from the Zhang family." Before he could finish his words, Tang Ye slashed a dagger across his neck, instantly cutting off his head and putting it into a brocade box without any trace of blood on it. Closing the box, Tang Ye's lips curved into a lazy smile. The gift is in hand. Perfect. Chapter 341. The Zhang family of Yuan continent was located on a small hill with beautiful scenery outside the Yuan continent prefecture. The entire top of the hill was the Zhang family's manor. It was close to noon, and the birthday banquet was about to begin. Those who were supposed to go up the hill had already gone up, and there were not many people at the foot of the hill. Chu Xiu was waiting for something in the forest not far from the hill with hundreds of elites from the Guanxi branch. After a while, Tang Ye's figure appeared from the forest, holding a brocade box with a human head in his hand. "Sir, I've got the gift." Tang Ye handed the brocade box to Chu Xiu with a smile, as if he had just done something insignificant. A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He looked at the hill and said in a calm tone, "Since everything is ready, let's go celebrate Zhang Wanshan's birthday. After all, this is his last birthday." The Zhang family did not feel the chill at the foot of the hill. On the top of the hill, the Zhang family's manor was decorated with lanterns and streamers, and it was a lively scene everywhere. Because there were too many people, the Zhang family's main hall and house could not accommodate them all, so the birthday banquet was held in the courtyard. Zhang Wanshan sat in the northernmost seat, and the people from the surrounding martial arts forces came forward one by one to celebrate Zhang Wanshan's birthday and gave him their gifts. These people seemed to be competing with each other, and the gifts they gave were more expensive than the previous one. The Zhang family people who were welcoming the guests read out the gifts one by one, and the more expensive the gift, the more proud they seemed. This scene also made the people below talk about it. Someone sighed and said, "TSK, look at the Zhang family's power. Now that the Wei family has been destroyed, the Zhang family has really become the #1 family in Guanxi." Some people said that the Zhang family had admitted defeat in front of the new disciplinary officer and that it was no longer possible. Now it seems that it was all nonsense. Someone next to him said, "It seems that the Zhang family is much smarter than the Wei family. Chu Xiu is a new official, and the Zhang family is right not to cause trouble at this time. They should keep a low profile for the time being. The Zhang family's power is there, and it can be seen from their power now. The Wei family has been destroyed, but the Zhang family's power has not been affected at all." Almost all the people below were discussing the Zhang family's current power and influence, and all of them exclaimed in admiration. Seeing this scene, Zhang Wanshan and Zhang Kunz nodded in satisfaction. Their Zhang family's goal of restoring their prestige had been achieved. At this time, Zhang Wanshan looked around and asked, "Where is Dong Lai? Why did the child disappear again?" Zhang Kunz shook his head and said, "Old ancestor, Dong Lai has been spoiled too much by you. He's still running around at this time. But it's almost time for the banquet to start. We can't all wait for him, right?" Zhang Wanshan nodded and said, "All right, let's not wait for him for now. Let's start the banquet." Although Zhang Wanshan said so, he did not know why, but he suddenly had a feeling of trepidation, as if something bad was about to happen. Zhang Kun stood up and cupped his hands at the people present, saying, "Thank you, everyone, for attending my old ancestor's 188th birthday this time. My Zhang family is very grateful. Recently, our Zhang family has encountered some problems, causing some rascals to secretly slander our Zhang family. However, this birthday banquet also allowed our Zhang family to see the support of our fellow Wulin people. Our Zhang family is very grateful for it. Everyone who comes is a guest. It doesn't matter if the people outside don't have seats. I'll ask the servants to prepare more tables, and everyone can attend the birthday banquet together." As soon as this was said, the martial artists outside who were watching the bustle immediately began to praise Zhang family's righteousness and magnanimity. After all, for most of the martial arts circle sects, martial artists like them were basically ignored. Now that the Zhang family could still think of them, this matter was very magnanimous. Seeing this scene, Zhang Wanshan also suppressed the uneasiness in his heart. He stroked his beard and smiled with satisfaction. He felt at ease that the Zhang family could still have such power. However, at this moment, a voice came from outside. "Old ancestor of the Zhang family, you didn't invite me to your birthday banquet. Are you looking down on me, Chu Xiu?" As the voice came, the crowd directly separated to make a path. Chu Xiu walked straight into the Zhang family with nearly 100 of his subordinates. The other martial artists from Guanxi all made way, looking at Chu Xiu with a trace of fear and astonishment in their eyes. He came with ill intentions. In an instant, these 4 words popped up in the hearts of everyone present. The people of the Zhang family looked even more solemn. They did not expect that Chu Xiu would choose this time to make trouble for them. The Zhang family had schemed against Chu Xiu before. The enmity between the two sides was quite thorough. Under such circumstances, how could the Zhang family invite Chu Xiu to attend the birthday banquet? In the end, they did not expect that Chu Xiu would directly come without an invitation. Moreover, Chu Xiu came with so many people. Was he here to celebrate the birthday banquet? It was more like he was looking for trouble. Zhang Kun suppressed his anger. When he was about to say something, Zhang Wanshan held his hand. Looking at Chu Xiu, Zhang Wanshan smiled and said, "Official Chu is very busy every day. I was afraid of delaying Official Chu's official business, so I didn't inform Official Chu. Please forgive me, Your Excellency. However, since Your Excellency is here, please take a seat. Today, Official Chu came to give face to the Zhang family, so we naturally welcome him warmly." The attitude of the old ancestor of the Zhang family was extremely humble, which immediately stunned everyone present. After all, Zhang Wanshan was a well-known figure in Guanxi Wulin. When had he ever been so humble? Chu Xiu looked at Zhang Wanshan with a faint smile. He had never dealt with Zhang Wanshan, the old ancestor of the Zhang family, but now it seemed that this old guy was more tolerant than the old ancestor of the Wei family. Zhang Wanshan was so humble in front of him. If he made a move, it would be seen as overbearing and unreasonable. Unfortunately, Zhang Wanshan still didn't understand Chu Xiu's character. Once Chu Xiu made a decision, he wouldn't give up so easily. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Since you didn't invite me, I can only come uninvited. However, I came in a hurry and didn't prepare any expensive gifts for you. Please forgive me, Your Excellency." Zhang Wanshan quickly waved his hand and said, "Official Chu is too polite. There is no need for this." Chu Xiu shook his head seriously and said, "This won't do. Since it is a birthday banquet, there must be a congratulatory gift. If I don't, won't it seem that I, Chu Xiu, am stingy?" As he spoke, Chu Xiu threw the brocade box in his hand to Zhang Wanshan. Zhang Wanshan subconsciously caught the brocade box. The faint smell of blood coming from it made Zhang Wanshan feel that something was wrong. When he opened the brocade box, a head appeared in front of Zhang Wanshan. Zhang Wanshan immediately roared in pain, "Dong Lai." For a martial artist of Zhang Wanshan's age, he had hundreds of sons, grandsons, and even great-grandsons. He had long since become indifferent to the so-called familial blood. Among his descendants, the only one that Zhang Wanshan truly loved was Zhang Donglai. Zhang Wanshan also thought of him as the future of the Zhang family. Zhang Wanshan had carefully taught him since he was a child. Now, Zhang Donglai's head appeared in front of Zhang Wanshan. This kind of grief was even more serious than the death of his son. The corners of Chu Xiu's lips curled up into a teasing smile as he said, "It's said that old Master Zhang dotes on this great-grandson of yours the most. But in the end, your birthday is right around the corner, and your beloved great-grandson isn't around. Now, I've specially brought him here for you. How is it? Chu Xiu. My Zhang family is absolutely irreconcilable with you." Zhang Wanshan shouted angrily. He unsheathed a simple and unadorned longsword in his hand and slashed at Chu Xiu with an incomparably heavy sword momentum. Previously, Zhang Wanshan did not intend to fight with Chu Xiu. It was simply not worth it to fight to the death with Chu Xiu, the newly appointed Guanxi penal officer, for the sake of a temporary dispute. But now, Chu Xiu had actually sent the head of his most beloved great-grandson to him. This also showed that Chu Xiu's attitude was to fight to the death with the Zhang family. Since that was the case, why should Zhang Wanshan endure it? Why should he retreat? He might as well give it his all and fight to the death with Chu Xiu. When the other martial artists saw this scene, they immediately retreated, their eyes flashing with fear. This Chu Xiu was really not ordinary ruthlessness. He had just destroyed the Wei family, and now he wanted to kill the Zhang family. What was he doing? Was he preparing to slaughter all the martial arts forces in the entire Guanxi region? The Avici demon saber in his hand slashed out, and a monstrous devil chi with a dark red blood chi burst out, colliding with Zhang Wanshan's sword. Suddenly, a powerful wave burst out. In terms of pure strength, Zhang Wanshan was even stronger than the Wei family's ancestor. It was also ironic that the Wei family's ancestor had been cultivating in seclusion for more than 10 years, trying to preserve his qi and blood and prolong his life, but in the end, he was not as strong as Zhang Wanshan. However, with Chu Xiu's current level of combat strength, even if Zhang Wanshan was stronger than the Wei family's ancestor, it was only a matter of time before he killed him. Chu Xiu stood with his saber and said in a cold voice, "The Zhang family is treacherous and should be punished with death. Kill the entire family, and leave no one alive." As soon as he finished speaking, Tangya, Yan Bugue, and the others immediately took action, leading their subordinates to charge forward. The Zhang family was once a large family that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Wei family in the Guanxi region. There were many people in the family, about 1,000. But these 1,000 people could not compare to the elites under Chu Xiu. Whether it was the martial artists from the Guanzhong Torture Hall or the assassins from the Azure Dragon Society like Tang Ye and Yan Bugui, their quality was much stronger than that of the Zhang family. Although their numbers were only 1/10 of the opponents, when they really fought, the result was a crushing defeat. As soon as they came into contact with the Zhang family, dozens of people were easily killed. The Zhang family's ancestor looked at Chu Xiu with bloodshot eyes and said in a cold voice, "Chu Xiu, my Zhang family has already admitted defeat, why do you still want to kill us?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Zhang Wanshan, is this your first day in the pugilistic world? How can you be so naive? If admitting defeat and apologizing were useful, what's the use of weapons and fists? If I let you go today, the other forces in the Guanxi region will think that I, Chu Xiu, am easy to bully. They will think that the price of attacking me, Chu Xiu, is not high, so they will have the guts to challenge my authority. Your Zhang family is a living example. You are responsible for letting others know the price of provoking me, Chu Xiu." Chapter 342. Zhang Wanshan was from the older generation of the pugilistic world. He liked to think from the perspective of the older generation. Compromising and giving in were what aristocratic families with centuries of heritage were best at, just like how they had treated Chu Xiu previously. First, they would scheme openly and covertly. If they succeeded, they would hit him while he was down. If they failed, they would admit defeat and give in. Before the two parties really fought, no one would really make a killing move. It was a life-and-death struggle. However, Chu Xiu's way of doing things was the exact opposite of these people. He would either not make a move, or he would go all out and end everything. Guan Siyu had only given him a month's time. In this month, Chu Xiu had to prove his worth as the penal officer. He had to settle everything and stabilize the Guanxi area. As for how to stabilize the Guanxi area, it was very simple. He had to kill everyone in the Guanxi area, and they would naturally be stable. Zhang Wanshan closed his eyes in pain as he heard the screams of the Zhang family members being slaughtered. If he was not careful, he would lose everything. Previously, he had only thought that they would be interdependent. He could not allow Chu Xiu to continue being so arrogant. Only now did he realize what kind of existence he had provoked. When the Wei family had been destroyed, he had secretly mocked the Wei family for being too rash. In the end, it was his family's turn to ask for trouble in such a short time. Zhang Wanshan let out a long sigh. A crazed look appeared in his eyes as he said hatefully, "Chu Xiu, since you want to destroy my Zhang family, I will let you know that my Zhang family is not something you can destroy as you wish. Even if I have to risk my life, I will break a few of your teeth, Chu Xiu." Chu Xiu smiled sinisterly and said, "Sorry, my teeth are very good. I can chew through anything no matter how hard it is. Your Zhang family is not hard enough." Zhang Wanshan did not continue talking nonsense with Chu Xiu. Blood qi surged from his body into the long sword in his hand, causing the simple longsword to turn scarlet and evil. After all, there were very few people in the pugilistic world who were as afraid of death as the Wei family's patriarch. Most people in the pugilistic world had the courage to fight to the death. Zhang Wanshan was like this. He already knew that Chu Xiu had killing intent, so he naturally did not have any hope. He did not hope to protect the Zhang family. He only hoped to severely injure Chu Xiu and perish together with him. The blood sword soared into the sky, but the sword aura was majestic and heavy. Wherever the sword passed, the ground would tremble as if it was the power of the entire earth. The world was earth, and a gentleman was a virtuous person. The Zhang clan's primordial earth sword technique was majestic and heavy, and its sword aura was extremely stable. However, at this moment, its killing intent soared into the sky, and it directly drew upon the power of the earth to slash toward Chu Xiu. The power of this sword was astonishing, but the price it had to pay was also extremely shocking. Zhang Wanshan had to consume a portion of his life force with every breath that passed. The complete suppression of power could be said to be impeccable. Even if Chu Xiu used heaven's sun gazing at air, he could not see any flaws. However, Chu Xiu did not need to see any flaws. Demonic qi gathered in his hand, and he slashed down. His killing intent soared as he stepped into the selfless killing realm. Demonic qi and killing intent intertwined. Chu Xiu directly slashed out the last move of the Avicii three sabers. It was a powerful demonic saber with a trace of divine judgment. As the saber slashed down, the surging demonic qi collapsed inch by inch under Zhang Wanshan's majestic sword aura that contained the power of the earth. It actually began to crush Chu Xiu. Warriors in the unity of heaven and man realm had an advantage in terms of power. When they attacked, they would be passively contaminated with the power of heaven and earth. Now that Zhang Wanshan had ignited his blood essence to unleash this sword strike, the power of the earth was infused with the earth essence sword art, causing the might of this sword strike to be extremely powerful. Even Chu Xiu's 3 blades of Avicii could not contend against it head-on. However, at this moment, a bright light bloomed in the demonic qi. It was extremely dazzling, with a holy Buddha's light. Consummate Aquarius seal. The sudden change from devil to Buddha was something that no one could have imagined, including Zhang Wanshan, who bore the brunt of it. There were martial artists who cultivated 2 completely different martial arts, and there were even quite a few of them. However, there were very few who could circulate the demonic and Buddhist martial arts so smoothly and naturally like Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had neither Buddha nor demon in his heart. For him, any martial arts was just a means to kill people. Perhaps it was because of this that he could use the 2 martial arts without any hindrance. Under the bright light, Zhang Wanshan's figure was forced back, but then he rushed forward again with his sword. The sword momentum was like the pressure of Mount Tai. At this moment, Zhang Wanshan had even given up on any defense. Every sword momentum borrowed the power of heaven and earth to erupt with the greatest power, forcing Chu Xiu to fight it head-on. As the sword slashed down, even Chu Xiu's internal organs were injured by this powerful force. His qi and blood were shaken, and his face turned pale and red. Zhang Wanshan gritted his teeth. Chu Xiu wanted to destroy his Zhang family, so he wanted to make Chu Xiu pay the price. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly raised his head in the fierce battle and said in a cold tone, "Have you fought enough? Now it's my turn." As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu's eyes became as deep as an abyss. The moment his eyes met Zhang Wanshan's, Chu Xiu's spirit was directly pulled into a boundless abyss, strangling and torturing him. Originally, martial arts like the great art of extinguishing heaven and earth extinguishing soul was not very suitable for people with a higher cultivation level than oneself. Even if the other party had not cultivated a secret spirit skill, the other party's powerful qi and blood alone were enough to cancel out Chu Xiu's qi and blood. But now, Zhang Wanshan was burning his qi and blood to fight with Chu Xiu. After so many slashes just now, Zhang Wanshan was already close to exhaustion. His qi and blood were extremely weak, so how could he resist Chu Xiu's great art of extinguishing heaven and earth extinguishing soul? His spirit was immersed in the abyss, and Zhang Wanshan struggled frantically. The unwillingness in his mind made him struggle, and he wanted to pull Chu Xiu up even if he had to die. But when he had just broken free from the abyss of his spirit, Zhang Wanshan felt a chill in his chest. He looked down and saw that the pitch-black heavenly demon dance had been stabbed into his chest. As the long blade was pulled out, there was not a trace of blood on the black blade. Zhang Wanshan's eyes showed a trace of unwillingness, but he could only fall to the ground with a loud thud, completely lifeless. Ancestor. Seeing that Zhang Wanshan had been killed, the cultivators of the Zhang family immediately wailed, their eyes filled with endless grief. Compared to the Wei family's ancestor, Zhang Wanshan's prestige in the Zhang family was very high. After all, the Wei family's ancestor had been in seclusion for more than 10 years, and rarely cared about the family's affairs. Zhang Wanshan, on the other hand, was still managing the family. Although he was not the family head, he had to protect the Zhang family until now. But because of this, with Zhang Wanshan's death, the entire Zhang family was like a landslide. They no longer had the courage to resist, and they began to flee. They had lost their courage, especially in the hands of Tangya, Yan Bugui, and other elites. Fleeing was useless, and what followed was almost a one-sided massacre. Seeing this bloody scene, the cultivators of the other sects could not sit still and wanted to leave. But at this time, Chu Xiu said lightly, "No one is allowed to move. The birthday banquet is not over yet, and you all want to leave. This is against the rules." Everyone's movements suddenly froze, and they all revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. What was Chu Xiu planning to do? Did he really want to catch all of them in one fell swoop? Chu Xiu looked at the people present, and said calmly, "Lu family, Wang family, Qingping sword sect, War Iron Hall. I'll have to trouble the representatives of these 10 families to step forward." As soon as these words came out, the faces of the 10 families that had been named changed. This was because the Zhang family had joined forces with them to pressure the main hall, and wanted the main hall to punish Chu Xiu. Now that the Zhang family had been destroyed, from what Chu Xiu said, it seemed that he wanted to settle the score. Looking at the more than 10 people, Chu Xiu did not say a word. There was only the screams of the Zhang family disciples as they were slaughtered, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. Some of the 10 people even could not help but break out in cold sweat. After a long while, Chu Xiu said lightly, "During this period of time, enough people have died in the Guanxi region, and I don't want to kill again. You all don't have to die." As soon as they heard this, everyone present suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that this Chu Xiu was not crazy to the extreme, and he was prepared to catch all of them in one fell swoop. But before they could let out a sigh of relief, Chu Xiu immediately said, "But the death penalty can be avoided, but the punishment cannot be forgiven. People always have to pay for what they do, don't they? Each of you will take out half of your wealth and hand it over to the Guanxi region branch, and we will let this matter go." As soon as these words came out, the faces of the people present suddenly changed. Chu Xiu was simply demanding an exorbitant price. This was no longer cutting off their flesh, this was simply cutting off one of their legs. Just when someone wanted to refute, Chu Xiu stretched out a finger and said coldly, "I have given you a chance, but only once. Whether you want to choose or not, it is up to you." Those who wanted to refute just now immediately became listless, and did not dare to say another word of nonsense. With the Zhang family as a lesson, who would dare to disobey Chu Xiu again? This time, Chu Xiu had destroyed the Zhang family not only to kill a chicken to scare the monkeys, but also to kill a tiger in front of a group of monkeys, and the effect was quite significant. An hour later, the people of the Zhang family were completely killed. Occasionally, there were a few survivors who escaped, but it was no longer a big deal. After asking people to search the Zhang family clean, Chu Xiu waved his hand and directly led his people down the mountain, leaving the many martial artists present to look at each other. Looking at the Zhang family's blood flowing like a river, everyone present could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. They were afraid that from now on, the peaceful days of the Guanxi region would be over, and everyone would be shrouded in the shadow of Chu Xiu. Only some Jianghu elders vaguely remembered that only Guan Siyu had killed so many people when she first took charge of the Guanzhong torture room, and this Chu Xiu's methods were even more cruel and ruthless than Guan Siyu's. Chapter 343. In the Guanzhong torture room headquarters, Guan Siyu looked at the information that Chu Xiu had handed over and the information from the Criminal Investigation Division's secret agent. He was silent. In less than a month, Chu Xiu had already killed so many people in Guanxi that they were terrified and had completely stabilized the Guanxi division. The information that Chu Xiu had reported wasn't much different from the information that the Criminal Investigation Division had found. Chu Xiu didn't choose to hide his various methods. However, even Guan Siyu didn't know how to evaluate Chu Xiu now. Although he had achieved his goal of pacifying the Guanxi division, his methods were also criticized by many people. At this moment, Mei Qinglian gently pushed the door open and walked into the room. When she saw Guan Siyu's expression, she asked softly, "Master, do you have any troubles?" Guan Siyu handed the information to Mei Qinglian and said, "I gave Chu Xiu a month to pacify the Guanxi division. In the end, he did it. However, his methods are indescribable. In the past, Guan Siyu hated others interfering with the affairs of the Guanzhong torture room. He was also very unyielding. He wasn't called the Iron Judge in the past for nothing. However, he didn't know when it started, but he would habitually talk to Mei Qinglian about the matters of the Guanzhong torture room. After reading the information, Mei Qinglian's beautiful eyes flashed. She said, "Master, you don't have to take it to heart. In the past, none of the Guanxi division's torture officers were strong-willed. Chu Simo was a low-key person and ruled by doing nothing. Although Xiao Yi was powerful, his character was a little soft. He rarely killed people. Although Yin Batong was ruthless, he was too clever and scheming. He didn't use the right place. Now, Chu Xiu's methods are decisive and ruthless. It can be said that he's a sharp sword in the Guanzhong torture room. When we need him, we can send him out. He will definitely be of unexpected use. Master, you are the hall master. You need to balance kindness and authority. When you need to show your authority, you will need to use Chu Xiu." Guan Siyu nodded and said, "Madam is thoughtful. Let's consider Chu Xiu as the torture officer for the time being." With that, Guan Siyu called Yuqi over and asked him to send all the official documents and official seals to Chu Xiu as the Guanxi division's torture officer to Chu Xiu. Previously, Chu Xiu, Guan Siyu had only given Chu Xiu a month to stabilize his position. Siyu naturally didn't prepare these things. If Chu Xiu couldn't resolve the chaos in the Guanxi area within a month, wouldn't the things he had prepared have been wasted? Hence, only when Chu Xiu received these things could he be considered the true Guanxi division's torture officer. Inside the Guanxi branch, Chu Xiu played with the official seal that Yuqi had sent over. To put it simply, the body was like a river, a lake, and the inner energy and vital qi were the water in it. If one wanted to store more water, he had to turn the river into the sea. Some powerhouses in the martial Dao Grand Master realm, even if they didn't deliberately practice the body tempering technique, their physical bodies would also gradually become stronger. This was the reason. Now, Chu Xiu's strength was strong enough. With the foundation of the Xiantian skill, the power of the glazed golden silk gu, and the great primordial chaos technique of heaven and earth, Chu Xiu could already stand shoulder to shoulder with Zhang Wanshan and other old and frail martial artists in the unity of heaven and man realm in terms of pure strength. However, this was not enough. Compared with these powers, Chu Xiu's physical body was still a little too weak. This also caused Chu Xiu's physical body to suffer a certain power backfire when he unleashed these powers. This was not a good thing. Therefore, what Chu Xiu urgently needed now was a body tempering technique, a powerful body tempering technique. In Chu Xiu's mind, there were many powerful body tempering techniques that had not yet appeared. However, those places were either not available to Chu Xiu because he was not strong enough, or the time was not right. With Chu Xiu's current strength, he was not qualified to force them to appear. After thinking about it, there was a place that was quite in line with Chu Xiu's requirements. That place would appear soon, and there were many good things in it. In the original plot, someone got a good body tempering technique from it. The most important thing was that the place was very close to Chu Xiu, which could give Chu Xiu time to make arrangements in advance and give him an advantage. Chu Xiu asked someone to bring a map of the Guanxi land to West Chu. Chu Xiu pointed at a location. This was the place where the ruins would appear, Mount Deyang's Tong Tian Tower. This Mount Deyang actually did not belong to the Guanzhong torture room, but it was not considered West Chu either. It should be considered one of the trade routes from West Chu to the Guanzhong torture room. It was a small path and not an important route, so there were no West Chu people guarding it. The appearance of the Tong Tian Tower ruins would definitely attract many experts. If Chu Xiu wanted to gain an advantage, he had to make arrangements here as soon as possible. However, if there was no reason, Chu Xiu suddenly came to this place that had nothing to do with him to make arrangements, he would most likely be suspected. Therefore, Chu Xiu rubbed his chin and thought about it before heading to the torture hall headquarters. At the torture hall headquarters, when Guan Siyu heard that Chu Xiu had come, he was still puzzled. The Guanxi land had been completely stabilized, so why did Chu Xiu come? Walking into Guan Siyu's study, Chu Xiu bowed and said, "Greetings, Hall Master." Guan Siyu nodded and said, "Why did you come this time?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Hall Master, the Guanxi land has been completely stabilized. I have an idea that can make the Guanxi land even more prosperous." Guan Siyu raised his brows and said, "Oh. What idea?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Hall Master, my Guanxi land is only this big, so its development and potential is limited. However, I found that the small trade routes from West Chu to the Guanxi land are not managed by anyone. They belong to ungoverned areas and are very chaotic. There are small aristocratic families and sects, as well as bandits and mountain bandits. If my Guanzhong torture room can control them and turn the small trade routes into large trade routes, it can increase the influence of my Guanzhong torture room and make my Guanxi land even more prosperous." Guan Siyu was very surprised by Chu Xiu's words. This was because the Guanzhong torture room had always sought stability over the years and was in the stage of stabilizing their strength. Including Guan Siyu, no one had any thoughts of expanding. Chu Xiu was a newcomer to the Guanzhong torture room, yet he had such ambitions. This made Guan Siyu very surprised. Thinking about it, Guan Siyu said in a deep voice, "Your idea isn't bad, but do you know that your plan is very risky? It isn't that my Guanzhong land doesn't want to develop, but it is in the middle of 3 countries. No matter which direction we develop in, we will offend a country. My Guanzhong torture room isn't weak, but it isn't strong enough to go against a country." Guan Siyu was speaking the truth. A place like the Guanzhong land, which was in the middle of 3 countries, had always been a chaotic and ungoverned area. It was basically a mess with smoke everywhere. In the end, the Guanzhong torture room rose up in this kind of situation and became the center of trade between the 3 countries. This was a very difficult matter and it wasn't something that could be done in the future, but it was something that had never happened before. So in this kind of situation, the Guanzhong torture room had to be careful in everything they did and didn't dare overstep their boundaries at all. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Of course I know this, so I only chose a small place that West Chu doesn't care about. Not only is it to increase the strength of my Guanxi land, it is also to give my subordinates a bit of fighting spirit. The Guanxi land is only this big. There are some inspectors and constables that slack off after rising to a certain position and don't think about advancing. Anyway, no matter how hard they work, the state they control is only this big and this many. Now I have found a goal for them. Only with benefits in front of them can they have more motivation." Chapter 344. Guan Siyu looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. He didn't expect Chu Xiu to be able to see so far. For torture officers, they could only see the area they were in charge of. As long as they managed the area they were in charge of, they were qualified to be torture officers. For the past leaders of the Guanzhong torture room, it was easy for them to see this. Every generation of leaders worked hard to get the Guanzhong torture room out of this predicament. However, it wasn't easy for a young man like Chu Xiu, who had just joined the Guanzhong torture room, to see this. After pondering for a moment, Guan Siyu said in a deep voice, "Chu Xiu, you know the rules of the Guanzhong torture room. There are clear rewards and punishments. You were the one who requested this, so you won't be rewarded if you do it well. However, if you don't do it, it will affect the entire Guanzhong torture room. I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your newly obtained torture officer position. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, since I am a member of the Guanzhong torture room, I naturally have to think about the interests of the entire Guanzhong torture room. If everyone thinks about protecting themselves and doesn't expand, then the Guanzhong torture room will get worse with each generation. Chu Xiu's words were impassioned, but Guan Ziyu didn't know if Chu Xiu was speaking the truth. However, it was good that Chu Xiu was ambitious. Even if he was thinking about his own interests, if he succeeded in the end, it would benefit the entire Guanzhong torture room. Guan Ziyu said in a deep voice, since you have an idea, then do it. However, I still have to warn you to think thrice before you act. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, yes, thank you, leader. After he finished speaking, Chu Xiu immediately left. He had come to Guan Ziyu's place to find a suitable reason to make arrangements around Mount Diyang. In fact, Chu Xiu didn't care about that tiny bit of territory. The land of West Chu had many forests and mountains, so the first road to West Chu was Mount Diyang. However, because there was a huge mountain in the middle, most of the roads were narrow. There were only a few small towns in the surroundings, and there were no large prefectures. There were a few forces around Mount Diyang. Most of them were small sects and aristocratic families, but in fact, these so-called sects and aristocratic families secretly colluded with bandits to rob traveling merchants. Some of them were even bandits themselves. Only most of the merchants coming from West Chu to the Guanzhong torture room had West Chu's martial arts background, so they weren't easy to deal with. So, they picked up some soft persimmons and lived comfortably. In a manor on the west side of Mount Diyang, Yang Tingwei, the master of the horizontal blade mountain villa, frowned as he looked at the fire slave in front of him. Yang Tingwei was very surprised that the fire slave had suddenly come to visit with the identity of a constable from the Guanzhong torture room. Although the area around Mount Diyang wasn't considered the border of West Chu, it wasn't considered the territory of the Guanzhong torture room either. There were dense forests here, so it wasn't suitable to build a large prefecture. So, the Guanzhong torture room didn't care about this place in the past. However, due to the strength of the Guanzhong torture room, Yang Tingwei still cupped his hands and said, "May I know why Lord Fire Slave has come to my horizontal blade mountain villa? Are you here to buy weapons?" The horizontal blade mountain villa's Yang family was similar to some of the small forces around Mount Diyang, and they all had several identities. On the surface, the horizontal blade mountain villa's Yang family was doing the business of buying and selling weapons. The quality of the sabers forged by the Yang family was quite good. Although they were only second or third job grade mortal weapons, they were sharp and sturdy, and the price was reasonable. However, if the caravans around their horizontal blade mountain villa were weak and the goods they carried were very tempting, they didn't mind playing the role of bandits and killing people for their goods. Of course, facing the fire slave who represented the Guanzhong torture room, Yang Tingwei put away his bandit temper and was very polite. The fire slave casually cupped his hands and said, "Villa Master Yang, I'm a constable under the Guanzhong torture room's official Chu, the Guanxi penal officer, Chu Xiu. I'm not here to do business with you, but to inform you of something." 3 days later, at noon in Qingshan Town's East Sun Tower at the foot of Mount Diyang, my lord has invited the representatives of the forces around Mount Diyang to have a drink and discuss matters. I hope that Villa Master Yang won't be late. Yang Tingwei frowned and said, "Chu Xiu? He's the Guanxi penal officer, why does he want to discuss matters with us?" The fire slave said indifferently, "I don't know about these things. Anyway, my lord has already invited you, so whether Villa Master Yang comes or not depends on your mood. Of course, I don't know the consequences if you don't come. Villa Master Yang just needs to think about it carefully." Yang Tingwei's expression suddenly changed when he heard the fire slave's tone. The threat in the fire slave's tone was too obvious. However, Yang Tingwei swallowed his anger and said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, I'll be there when the time comes." The horizontal blade mountain villa wasn't a very strong force. As the family head, he was only at the physical invulnerability realm. He probably couldn't even defeat the fire slave in front of him. Since Mount Deyang was so close to the Guanxi region, the traveling merchants had already brought the news of the Guanxi region to the surroundings of Mount Deyang. They also knew that Wei Jiuduan had died and that Chu Xiu had become the new disciplinary officer. Facing such a terrifying existence who could easily kill a oneness of heaven and man realm expert, Yang Tingwei didn't dare to refuse. He also didn't have the strength to refuse. Incidents similar to the horizontal blade mountain villa were happening in every corner of Mount Deyang. This was also one of Chu Xiu's plans. This time, Chu Xiu needed to prepare for the appearance of the Tower of Babel in advance. He didn't want to fight with a bunch of lowly bandits here. Therefore, he had to get rid of all these people as soon as possible. Then, he could go to Mount Deyang and lay out his plan in peace. 3 days later, in the largest restaurant in Qingshan town, Dongyang Tower, at the foot of Mount Deyang, more than 10 martial arts practitioners ranging from the physical invulnerability realm to the 5 Qis gathering origin realm were sitting there, waiting anxiously. These people were all famous martial arts forces around Mount Deyang. Chu Xiu had personally sent people to inform them. None of them dared not to come, nor did they dare to be late. Instead, they had all been waiting here since early. These people were not idiots. For the time being, they still did not know what had happened. If they offended Chu Xiu, a disciplinary officer of the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall, who was also ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, because of this, they would be out of their minds. Dongyang Tower was silent. At this time, Yang Tingwei spoke first. "Do you know what happened?" "Chu Xiu is the penal officer of Guanzhong torture room. Why did he come to Mount Deyang?" "Boss Chen, do you know any inside information?" Yang Tingwei turned his eyes to a middle-aged martial arts practitioner in a black robe with a full beard. This man was the leader of Thunder Cloud Stronghold, Black Demon Hand, Chen Yun. Thunder Cloud Stronghold was the largest bandit stronghold around Mount Deyang. Most of the forces around Mount Deyang were guest bandits, but Chen Yun's Thunder Cloud Stronghold was a professional bandit. They only relied on robbing merchants to support themselves. One could imagine how strong the Thunder Cloud Stronghold was. In fact, Thunder Cloud Stronghold was indeed the largest force around Mount Deyang. Chen Yun himself had the cultivation of 5 Qis collecting in origin. At this time, hearing Yang Tingwei's question, Chen Yun waved his hand and said in a rough voice, "How would I know what Chu Xiu is up to? However, I only know that Chu Xiu is an outsider and we are on the same side. As long as we are united and don't be divided by Chu Xiu, no matter what Chu Xiu wants to do, we won't be at a disadvantage." Everyone present nodded their heads in agreement. However, at this moment, the sound of footsteps suddenly came from outside. Everyone in the hall immediately fell silent and subconsciously sat up straight. Chu Xiu was wearing a black robe and walked slowly into the hall. Although he was the youngest among the people present, the aura he carried was extremely terrifying. Every step he took seemed to trample on the hearts of the crowd, causing them to feel uneasy. Walking straight to the main seat, Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said in a deep voice, "My name is Chu Xiu. I am the Guanxi penal officer under the Guanzhong torture room. I think everyone should know me." Yang Tingwei was the first to stand up and said, "Official Chu is famous in the martial world. Of course we know you." "I am Yang." However, before Yang Tingwei could finish, he was interrupted by Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu said coldly, "There is no need to introduce yourself. I don't have that much time to listen. You only need to know who I am. As for who you are, I have no time or interest to know." As soon as this was said, Yang Tingwei's face immediately turned red. The eyes of the others also showed a hint of anger. They had seen arrogant people, but they had never seen someone as arrogant as Chu Xiu. "It was you, Chu Xiu, who called us here, but now you don't even want to know our names and identities. What is this? Humiliation? You deliberately called us here just to humiliate us?" However, although these people were indignant, they dared not say anything because of Chu Xiu's identity and prestige. Glancing at the people present, Chu Xiu said lightly, "I am here today to inform you of one thing. From today on, all the mountain roads around Mount Diang will be included in the scope of the Guanzhong torture room and under the jurisdiction of Guanxi. The local martial arts forces will also be under the supervision of the Guanzhong torture room. Don't be a bandit anymore. It is too degrading and you can't get any benefits. From today on, your forces will set up checkpoints on the mountain roads around Mount Diang and collect tolls. As long as the caravans pay the tolls, you must ensure their safety. You can discuss the tolls yourself, but 60% of them will be handed over to the Guanxi branch." As soon as this was said, the people present suddenly exploded. They had never expected that this time, Chu Xiu came to take them in, and even wanted to deprive them of all their current benefits. One of the martial artists couldn't help but stand up and say angrily, "Official Chu, don't you think this is a little?" As soon as the martial artist stood up, before he could finish his words, Chu Xiu looked at him and performed the art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth and soul transfer. His powerful mental strength directly poured into the martial artist's mind. The next moment, the martial artist with the strength of physical invulnerability realm instantly bled from his 7 orifices. He twitched a few times and directly fell to the ground, dead. Chu Xiu looked at the crowd, who instantly kept quiet out of fear, and said emotionlessly, "There's one thing you're mistaken about. This time around, I'm not here to discuss matters with you. I'm just here to inform you. So what you need to do is to obey. Of course, you can also choose to resist. This is your freedom." Chapter 345. Chu Xiu's domineering attitude infuriated everyone present. But what could they do besides being angry? Be it in terms of strength or status, they were not a match for Chu Xiu. If they were to jump out and oppose Chu Xiu at this time, even if they were to say one more word like that fellow just now, it would be a very miserable thing. Chen Yun of the Thundercloud Stronghold was the first to stand up and say, "Since official Chu has said so, the Thundercloud Stronghold has no objections. When we go back, we will immediately order our subordinates to carry it out." At this time, Chen Yun was as obedient as he could be. He was like a completely different person from the previous ruthless leader of the Thundercloud Stronghold, Black Demon Hand. At this time, everyone present was secretly cursing Chen Yun for seeming straightforward but actually cunning. Just now, he was the one who said that everyone should unite to fight against Chu Xiu, but now he was the first to take the lead and admit defeat. Of course, from Chen Yun's point of view, a wise man submits to circumstances. He would not do something that would send him to his death. When the others saw Chen Yun's attitude, they could only obediently bow their heads and accept their fate. It did not matter if they were sincerely convinced by Chu Xiu. In any case, it was enough as long as they were convinced. Looking at everyone, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Those who are obedient will not die, nor will they suffer losses. You will be glad that you made the choice today. Alright, you can all leave." Chu Xiu had said that he would treat them to a banquet, but in the end, not to mention wine, they did not even get to eat a single leaf. Of course, at this time, no one would care about this. To them, being able to survive this time was already very fortunate. After sending these people away, the Ghost Hand Monarch walked in and said in surprise, "Sir, it's done just like that?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "What else can I do?" For most people, it was impossible to reason with them. It would be easier to just draw their swords and sabers as soon as they appeared. If they don't obey, they will die. It is that simple. Sometimes, people will be lost in the face of benefits, but it is a good choice to make in the face of life and death. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, the Ghost Hand King suddenly felt a chill. Even though he was very loyal to Chu Xiu, he couldn't help but think that Chu Xiu's way of thinking was extremely crooked. In other words, those who submit to me will prosper, and those who oppose me will perish. However, other than the Kunlun devil cult that was at its peak 1,000 years ago, it seemed like no one, not even the Daoist and Buddhist sects, could reach such heights. The Ghost Hand monarch shook his head to get rid of the messy thoughts in his mind. He said in a deep voice, "Sir, I have prepared the things you asked me to prepare." With that, the Ghost Hand King gave Chu Xiu 5 palm-sized pocket-sized array discs. Ghost Hand King was proficient in some array Dao. What Chu Xiu asked Ghost Hand King to prepare was very simple. It was just an auxiliary 5 elements array. This kind of 5 elements array did not have the slightest lethality. Its only function was to distinguish the direction according to the power of the 5 elements. As long as there was enough power supply, the array could always monitor the surrounding movements and transmit it to Chu Xiu. Of course, for most people, this kind of thing was relatively useless, but for Chu Xiu, it was very useful. This was because these 5 array discs could provide Chu Xiu with a clear direction after the Tower of Babel reappeared. It could also monitor the movements of a group of people, so that Chu Xiu would not become blind. In the original plot, Chu Xiu had heard that after the Tower of Babel was opened, not only would one be lost to the point of not being able to distinguish north from south, but they would also not be able to distinguish between the sky and the ground. When the time came, those who were still in the Tower of Babel would be permanently sealed underground. At that time, there seemed to be no other way but to commit suicide. The martial arts forces around Mount Deyang had been controlled. In the past few days, Chu Xiu had carefully set up the array discs on Mount Deyang, not wanting others to find them. The name Mount Deyang was very domineering, but in fact, Mount Deyang was not very big. Legend had it that Mount Deyang was also a famous mountain and river in the past. It had even produced an emperor of a country, so it was respectfully called Mount Deyang. There were also top sects in the world on the mountain. Unfortunately, during the Great Calamity 10,000 years ago, the once majestic and magnificent Mount Deyang had been reduced to its current state. It was just an ordinary little hill. However, Chu Xiu knew that although the legend was not credible, it was not groundless. There were no top sects in the pugilistic world on Mount Deyang, but there was something left by the top sects in the pugilistic world, which was the Tower of Babel. The builders of the Tower of Babel were established by a famous sect in ancient times, the Tongtian martial sect. The Tongtian martial sect was a very strange sect. They practiced Taoism, Buddhism, and Diabolism at the same time. In addition to these 3 mainstream martial arts, the Tongtian martial sect was interested in practicing any strange martial arts and incorporated it into their own martial arts system. The Tower of Mount Deyang was not where the Tongtian martial sect used to be. It was just a branch established by the Tongtian martial sect. In the past, the Tongtian martial sect had built dozens of Tower of Babel in the world. The disciples of the Tongtian martial sect could practice in them, and it was also convenient for them to collect all kinds of strange cultivation methods from all over the pugilistic world. However, the most strange thing was not these, but the idea of the Tongtian martial sect, which was to use martial arts to reach the heavens. The Tongtian martial sect firmly believed that when martial arts were practiced to the extreme, they could break the shackles of the world, break the void, transcend the human body, and become an immortal. The so-called immortals and Buddhas were all cultivated by people, so they did not care about the difference between Taoism, Buddhism, and Diabolism. Anyway, in their eyes, these things were just tools on their way to heaven. Breaking the void with martial arts was just a legend. No one knew whether anyone succeeded or not. In the past, Ning Xuanji was called an immortal, but the people in the pugilistic world also knew that he was still a human and could not become an immortal. In martial arts, there was no strongest martial arts, only the strongest people. Therefore, the ancient people were not necessarily stronger than the modern people. What Ning Xuanji could not do, no one could do in ancient times. Otherwise, the Tongtian martial sect would not have held this obsession for so long until they were completely destroyed during the great calamity of ancient times. Today, the location of the Tongtian martial sect had long disappeared. Only some sporadic remains of the Tower of Babel would appear. Because the Tower of Babel all over the world existed independently, some Tower of Babel might have a lot of good things in it, while some had very little. Some had even been completely destroyed and had no value at all. In the original plot, Mount Deyang, the Tower of Babel that was about to appear, was the most well-preserved Tower of Babel in history. The formation in it was almost undamaged and could still be operated. Therefore, the appearance of the Tower of Babel in Mount Deyang this time was not like the other Tower of Babel, which completely appeared because of the destruction of the formation. Instead, only a part of it appeared. After absorbing the power of heaven and earth for a period of time and replenishing its strength, it would sink into the ground again. At that time, no one thought that the interior of the Tower of Babel would be so complete. They thought that it was the Tower of Babel that had appeared in the past, which was already dilapidated and did not have many good things. Therefore, no martial Dao Grand Master took action. As a result, a group of people did not search the Tower of Babel in a short time. They only found a few things on the first floor. When the time was up, some of them escaped, while others were completely sealed in the Tower of Babel and sunk into the ground. When the news spread later, several forces teamed up to excavate the Tower of Babel. There were even martial Dao Grand Masters who tried to break the formation by force. In the end, they triggered the formation in the Tower of Babel, causing the Tower of Babel to self-destruct. The good things that were not found in it and the people who were previously sealed in it were all killed. It could be said to be a pity. Of course, with Chu Xiu around this time, the things in the Tower of Babel would not go to waste. Moreover, even if it was really a waste, Chu Xiu did not intend to inform Guan Siyu in advance that there were good things in the Tower of Babel this time. If Guan Siyu did not come, the things would belong to him. If Guan Siyu came, the things would probably belong to the entire Guanzhong torture room. 7 days later, there was a sudden violent vibration on Mount Deyang, as if the mountain was collapsing and the ground was cracking. The entire Mount Deyang began to tremble. The forces scattered at the foot of Mount Deyang all showed horror in their eyes. They immediately got their people to prepare to escape. They thought that the Earth Dragon had turned the world upside down. Under a natural disaster, even as a martial artist, there was no guarantee that they could survive. It was just that the probability was slightly higher or slightly lower. However, before they could completely escape, a dazzling white light bloomed on top of Mount Deyang. Even in broad daylight, it could be seen clearly. This time, even an idiot could guess that a treasure should have been born on Mount Deyang. However, when Chen Yun, Yang Tingwei, and the others had just walked up the mountain, they were stopped by Tang Ye, Yan Bugui, and the others. Chen Yun's eyes revealed anger as he said, "Lord Tang, what is the meaning of this? Mount Deyang is where we have lived for generations. Do we not even have the right to go up now?" Tang Ye said indifferently, "Maybe in the past, but not now. Now, Mount Deyang is my lord's territory. If he says that you can't go up, you can't go up." The people from the dozen forces around Mount Deyang were all agitated. Seeing that a treasure had been born, but in the end, they did not even have the right to go up and see it. How could they not be angry? However, before they completely lost their temper, Chu Xiu walked over, glanced at them, and said indifferently, "You want to go in? Sure, but if you want to snatch the treasure, you have to weigh your own strength first. The thing on Mount Deyang has not been completely born yet. There will definitely be a fight for it later. If you want to snatch it now, does that mean you want to be my enemy? Do you think I should get rid of you in advance?" Under Chu Xiu's coercion, Chen Yun and the others did not even say a word and all left dejectedly. However, they also secretly hated Chu Xiu's overbearing attitude and decided to spread the news. If they could not get it, Chu Xiu would also not get it. Looking at these people's backs, Tangya stood behind Chu Xiu and asked, "Lord, do we need to kill all of them? These guys are holding a grudge, I'm afraid they will spread the news." Chu Xiu pointed at the soaring white light and said, "This thing is too conspicuous, and it has not been completely born yet. As long as you are not blind, you will be able to see it. Let them spread the news. A bunch of small fries will not attract the attention of the big shots no matter how much they spread the news. On the contrary, if I kill all of them, it will attract the attention of others." Chapter 346. The news of a treasure appearing in Mount Diang was quickly spread by Chen Yun and the others through the West Chu caravans. This was also because Chu Xiu did not stop them and deliberately caused this to happen. After the great calamity of ancient times, countless relics and treasures had appeared in Jianghu. Most of the people in Jianghu had even figured out whether there were treasures among them. Due to the circulation of some information from ancient times, most of the ruins were able to roughly deduce the origins of the ruins not long after they appeared. Then, they would analyze whether there were any treasures in the ruins and finally decide what level of experts to send to fight for it. Otherwise, experts at the level of Wu Dao Grand Master would have something to do. Even if they had free time, they would still delay their own cultivation. This time, some forces around Mount Diang did not find anything special after hearing about the appearance of the Tong Tian Tower. It seemed that Mount Diang did not have any top forces in the past. Moreover, this matter was spread by some small characters. There was no detailed information, so it was not worth making a big fuss about. However, although they wouldn't make a big fuss about it, the people who heard about it wouldn't be indifferent. Even if they sent some people to take a look, it would still be good to test the waters. What if they were lucky and there really was something good inside? For so many years, most of the forces in the Jianghu had done this, and some rogue martial artists and small sects would join in the fun. For them, it didn't matter if the things inside were good or bad, as long as they got a chance, they would never be able to get enough of it. Therefore, in just 2 days, many individual cultivators and people from some small forces who happened to hear the news nearby came. At this time, on Mount Diang, a large area of land had cracked, and a strange round tower broke out of the ground, revealing a height of several feet. In the past, most towers had been square, but this Tower of Babel was round. It also represented that the sky was round and the earth was square, and it could reach the heavens. The appearance of the Tong Tian Tower was extremely huge, with a radius of several hundred feet, and this was only the appearance. There was a space formation inside, which was even more huge. The entire Tong Tian Tower was made of a kind of white stone. It was unknown whether it was because of the formation or the material, but the Tong Tian Tower shone with a thick layer of white light. Even in the daytime, it was exceptionally dazzling. With so many people here, this time, Chu Xiu didn't let anyone seal off the Tower of Babel. Right now, only some small characters had come, so sealing them would still be of some use. However, if some important figures came later, and Chu Xiu wanted to seal them, then he would have to fight with them before the Tower of Skysplit opened. Victory or defeat aside, he would definitely suffer a loss. Without Chu Xiu's blockade, Chen Yun and the others hastily made their way to Mount Diang. They hid in the crowd as they watched Chu Xiu, sneering inwardly. "Aren't you very arrogant, Chu Xiu?" Now that more and more people had come, it had to let go of Mount Diang and let the others in. Moreover, after learning that the relic turned out to be the Tower of Skysplit, Chen Yun and the others were very excited. The appearance of Skysplit Tower ruins could be traced. Throughout history, there had already been several Skysplit Towers that had appeared. Excluding the few that had been completely destroyed, there were still many good treasures left. Although those top sects didn't care too much about them, for these rogue martial artists and martial artists that came from small forces, they could be called precious treasures. Just obtaining one of these treasures could change their destiny. At this time, the situation on Mount Diang was a bit delicate. Chu Xiu was standing in front of the main entrance of the Tower of Skysplit, which was the best position. As long as the Tower of Skysplit opened, he would definitely have the upper hand. When the others saw this scene, they rolled their eyes and had some ideas. A short and fat middle-aged man wearing a black flowery robe walked out. He cupped his hands towards Chu Xiu and said with a smile, "I am Yin Luohua of the Shu land of West Chu. I have long heard of official Chu's reputation in the Jianghu. This time, I have specially come to get to know you." Seeing this short and fat middle-aged man, the people present immediately whispered. This person's reputation in the West Chu land was not small. Three-Poison Devil Finger Yin Luohua was considered a character among the rogue cultivators of West Chu. He was a famous unity of the world realm martial artist. This person came from a humble background and didn't have a strong inheritance. The only thing that stood out was that he had refined 3 fingers on his left hand into poison fingers. He had absorbed countless poisons and could even corrode qi. Those who touched it would even have their internal organs and meridians corroded by the poison. So even if a martial artist was stronger than his opponent, they were not willing to fight to the death with him. This was because even if they killed their opponent, as long as they were hit by Yin Luohua's poison fingers, they would have to pay a great price to expel the poison. It was not worth it at all. So in the West Chu land, this fellow was like a fly. Although his strength wasn't at the peak, no one was willing to fight with him. No matter what they encountered, as long as Yin Luohua didn't go too far, most people were not willing to become hostile with him. At this time, Yin Luohua stood out to get close to Chu Xiu. His goal was very clear. He wanted to stand in Chu Xiu's position. Of course, Yin Luohua didn't want to drive Chu Xiu away. He just wanted to take the initiative with Chu Xiu. Although this place wasn't considered the territory of the Guanzhong torture room, it was said that Chu Xiu had already included this place into his territory. A strong dragon couldn't suppress a snake in its territory. This place was too close to the Guanzhong torture room, so Yin Luohua didn't want to suppress Chu Xiu, who was half a snake in his territory. Moreover, the news of Chu Xiu killing a unity of the world realm expert was widely spread. Although Yin Luohua had the strength of the unity of the world realm, he really didn't want to make a move against Chu Xiu at this time. Chu Xiu looked at Yin Luohua's figure walking over with a smile that wasn't a smile on his face. He said, "What did you just say? Get to know each other? Are you worthy?" Yin Luohua's footsteps immediately stopped and his face darkened as he said, "Chu Xiu, what do you mean?" The smile on Chu Xiu's face disappeared and he said with an expressionless face, "Is my meaning not clear enough? I'm saying you're not worthy. I'll have to trouble you to find out what kind of people are qualified to be my, Chu Xiu's friends. What kind of people are qualified to be my, Chu Xiu's enemies. You rely on underhanded methods to make others not dare move against you. You're like a toad and a fly, yet you dare to try to get close to me? Are you worthy?" Chu Xiu's words were extremely insulting. Not to mention Yin Luohua being a famous person in the West Chu land, even a small character wouldn't be able to endure it. But some people thought about it and realized that what Chu Xiu said was the truth. In the past, during the God Weapon Conference, the people that were friends with Chu Xiu were Mo Tianlin, Luo Feiheng, and Xie Xiaolu. As for Chu Xiu's opponents, they were all on the same level as Xiahou Wujiang. Although Yin Luohua had the cultivation of the unity of the world realm, he couldn't compare to these people at all. His reputation wasn't that good either. To put it bluntly, not to mention becoming friends with Chu Xiu, he didn't even have the qualifications to be enemies with Chu Xiu. At this time, Yin Luohua's face turned red from Chu Xiu's words. His heart was already filled with rage. In any case, he was considered a top figure in the West Chu land, and there were so many people here who knew him. Now that he was being insulted by Chu Xiu, if he continued to endure it, he would probably be laughed at for the rest of his life. Yin Luohua took a step forward, and his body was surrounded by a dark green aura. He shouted coldly, "Chu Xiu. You're going too far. Don't think that you can look down on us seniors in the pugilistic world just because you're in the top 10 of the Longhu list. I only befriended you because I gave you face. If I didn't give you face, who do you think you are?" As soon as he finished speaking, Yin Luohua raised his left hand, which had always been shrouded in his wide sleeves. His middle finger, index finger, and ring finger simply didn't look like human fingers. They were pitch black like ink, and there were also ferocious blood-red sharp nails on them, just like those of a wild beast. Yin Luohua's unconventional cultivation method was equivalent to harming others and himself. Basically, he would never be able to break through to the martial Dao Grandmaster level in this lifetime. Of course, for a rogue cultivator like him, being able to step into the unity of the world realm was already extremely lucky, not to mention becoming a martial Dao Grandmaster. Yin Luohua's index finger pointed out, and the black poison mist and demonic qi roared out. The aura qi actually condensed into the shape of an evil spirit that wrapped around his left arm, looking extremely shocking. Yin Luohua's own strength wasn't that strong, and the strength of his aura qi wasn't much stronger than the old and frail Wei family ancestor and Zhang Wanshan. The most troublesome part of his finger was the poison that erupted from his finger. It could corrode qi and corrode internal organs and meridians, so it was impossible to defend against it. Yin Luohua didn't even have an antidote for this poison. Although he wouldn't die immediately after being poisoned, it wasn't easy to expel the poison. This time, Yin Luohua used the three-poison demonic finger. It seemed like he hated Chu Xiu for humiliating him before, so he didn't care about Chu Xiu's identity as a member of the Guanzhong torture room. After getting the treasure, he would return to West Chu, so where would the Guanzhong torture room find him? At this time, Chu Xiu's mouth revealed a cold smile. He formed a seal with his hand, and when the fist landed, it immediately blossomed with a holy light. Perfect Aquarius seal. The blinding radiance collided with the jet-black, jade-green poisonous finger, and everyone heard a miserable howl. Yin Luohua's index finger had actually been smashed apart by Chu Xiu's powerful, perfect Aquarius seal. However, although Yin Luohua's index finger was shattered and even twisted beyond shape, the dark green poison mist directly broke through the powerful force of the perfect Aquarius seal and directly exploded into Chu Xiu's hands. In almost an instant, Chu Xiu's arms had already turned pitch black. Chapter 347. The exchange between Chu Xiu and Yin Luohua had caused the eyes of everyone present to twitch. The strength of these two people was truly astonishing. A single exchange had resulted in a situation where both sides were heavily injured. Chu Xiu's Buddhist seal technique directly shattered one of Yin Luohua's fingers. It seemed that he would not be able to recover. From now on, his nickname would become Double Poison Devil Finger. On the other hand, Chu Xiu was also at a disadvantage. Both of his arms were contaminated with Yin Luohua's poison. It would be impossible for him to participate in the fight for Tong Tian Tower. Although Yin Luohua lost one of his fingers, he still had two fingers. In this way, Chu Xiu was at a greater disadvantage. However, from this point of view, Chu Xiu really had the strength to fight against a unity of heaven and man realm martial artist. But this time, he encountered Yin Luohua, who was difficult even for martial artists of the same level. It could only be said that Chu Xiu was unlucky. However, at this time, Chu Xiu formed the inner lion seal in his hand. While suppressing his body, the glazed gold thread goo in his body suddenly burst out with a strange golden light, directly expelling the poison in his body. Chu Xiu shook his hand, and two streams of pitch-black blood sprayed out. When it landed on the ground, it immediately gave off a white smoke. The glazed gold thread goo was the supreme goo of Miaojiang moon-worshipping cult. Its original form was several kinds of powerful poisonous insects. It could be said that it could suppress most poisons. Not to mention that Chu Xiu had the inner lion seal technique that could suppress his own injuries. Seeing that Chu Xiu could so easily expel Yin Luohua's poison from his body, and only lost a little bit of qi and blood, everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. Was this Chu Xiu immune to poison? Looking at the flabbergasted Yin Luohua, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I've said it before. You're not worthy of being friends with me. Now that you've seen the outcome, do you still think you're worthy?" Yin Luohua's complexion was already as black as his poison demon finger, but at this time, he really did not dare to continue challenging Chu Xiu. One of the 3 poison demon fingers that he had relied on to become famous had actually been smashed by Chu Xiu today. This had already made his heart bleed. If he were to attack again, it was still unknown whether he would be able to keep the other 2 fingers. In the past, he had always used the power of his poison demon finger to intimidate others. He did not expect that he would be completely defeated by Chu Xiu today. Thinking of this, Yin Luohua could only retreat unwillingly. He even seemed to hear someone mocking him from behind. At this moment, a cold voice rang out, "If he isn't worthy to be your enemy, then what about I?" As the voice rang out, a martial artist in his 60s wearing a lake blue robe separated the crowd and walked over. Behind him were more than 10 Xiantian, inner aura, and outer aura realm disciples. This person's aura was very strong, and the gang energy around him seemed to be flashing with sharp sword qi. His face was very elegant and gentle, like a teacher in a private school. However, his eyes carried a trace of cold electricity, and people who looked at him could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. Just based on his aura alone, this person was already several times stronger than Yin Luohua. Feeling the hostility from this person, Chu Xiu could not help but frown and ask, "Who are you?" Chu Xiu dared to guarantee that he had absolutely not seen this martial artist in the unity of heaven and man realm before. Even the aura on this person was very unfamiliar. However, Chu Xiu could see the intense hatred and murderous intent in the other party's eyes. This person was definitely someone who had a karmic conflict with him. However, the number of people Chu Xiu had killed was a little too many. As a result, even Chu Xiu himself had no idea how many people he had offended. The sword-wielding martial artist said coldly, "I am Ba Mountain Sword Sect's Teachertsen. Chu Xiu, you killed my disciple, but now you don't even recognize me?" Hearing this, the people present were in an uproar. This person was the elder of Ba Mountain Sword Sect, Sorrowful Autumn Poem, Teachertsen. Because Mount Diang was close to the southwest of West Chu and the southeast of Eastern Qi, these 2 places had the most martial artists present. But Mount Diang was on the border of West Chu, so the West Chu martial artists were more numerous. They had naturally heard of this famed elder of Ba Mountain Sword Sect. Teachertsen's background was quite legendary. He only officially started cultivating martial arts in his 30s. Before he started cultivating martial arts, he was really a teacher in a private school. Because his surname was Tsen, the students respectfully addressed him as Teacher Cien. In reality, his real name was naturally not Teacher Cien. Later, due to a great change in his family, Teachertsen was accidentally saved by the people of Ba Mountain Sword Sect, and also accidentally joined the Ba Mountain Sword Sect. Everyone knew that it was important to build a solid foundation in martial arts from childhood. But Teachertsen had only started cultivating halfway, and it was already good that he could even start. But who would have thought that Teachertsen's talent was so great? Even though he had missed the best period of cultivation, his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds, even faster than some young disciples. As a result, Teachertsen quickly stepped into the realm of unity of heaven and human, and became an elder of Ba Mountain Sword Sect. But it was a pity that the step of martial arts grandmaster did not rely on talent. It also required enlightenment and accumulation. What Teachertsen lacked was the accumulation from childhood and youth. This caused him to have almost no chance of becoming a martial arts grandmaster in this life. But fortunately, Teachertsen did not place too much importance on that realm. In these years, as an elder of Ba Mountain Sword sect, Teachertsen had taught many disciples. Among them, Zhang Baitao, who had been killed by Chu Xiu, was the one who had left the deepest impression on him. Zhang Baitao was not the most talented among his disciples, but he was the most hard-working one. Teachertsen admired this. Last time, when Zhang Baitao had gone home to visit his family, Teachertsen had secretly given Zhang Baitao some good things for him to give to his father. But Teachertsen had never thought that his most beloved disciple would disappear without a trace. When Teachertsen had asked the people of Wind Sweeping Building to investigate, he found out that Zhang Baitao had died at the hands of Chu Xiu. In the past, Teachertsen did not have the opportunity to travel from West Chu to Northern Yen to find Chu Xiu for revenge. But now, the enemy who had killed his disciple was right in front of him. This time, Teachertsen could not hold back. Chu Xiu thought for a while and finally remembered who the person in front of him was. "You are that Zhang Baitao's master?" "Sorry, I really did not know. Too many people have died in my hands. If I had to write down the names of every single one of them, wouldn't I be too busy?" A murderous glint appeared in Teachertsen's eyes. Purple light flashed in his hand as he gripped the hilt of his sword. But at this time, a disciple behind him pulled on Teachertsen's sleeve and said in a low voice, "Master, don't be rash. After we enter the Tower of Babel, we will take revenge for junior brother. If we act now, we will only be a joke to others." This time, Teachertsen had brought his disciple to travel the martial world. Coincidentally, he had heard the news that a treasure had appeared on Mount Deyang, so he had rushed over. He did not expect to meet Chu Xiu. Teachertsen was usually very calm, but today, he had seen the enemy who had killed his disciple, so he was a little rash. He looked around and saw that everyone else was waiting to watch a good show. In their opinion, Chu Xiu and Teachertsen were both from great forces and powerful existences. It would be best for them to have a life-and-death battle here. If one of them died, there would be one less, and they would have a better chance. Teachertsen loosened his grip on his sword, but at this time, a voice sneered. "Your Ba Mountain Sword sect really has no guts. He killed your disciple, but you are still hesitating here." Two people walked out of the crowd, both wearing embroidered robes and a crown. The younger one was Xiahou Wujiang, and the older one was a middle-aged man at the unity of heaven and man realm. At this time, Xiahou Wujiang had also stepped into the 5 Qis towards the origin realm. This surprised Chu Xiu greatly. It was not that Chu Xiu looked down on Xiahou Wujiang, but it was because his path was different from Xiahou Wujiang's. Chu Xiu walked the path of battle and killing. It was easier to break through in fierce battles of life and death. Xiahou Shi mainly cultivated the imperial spirit art, and the growth of her mental power was much slower than the cultivation of her inner strength and physical body. But now, Xiahou Wujiang had also stepped into the 5 Qis towards the origin realm. This speed was very terrifying. Looking at Chu Xiu, Xiahou Wujiang's eyes bloomed with murderous intent and coldness. Last time, he had suffered a great loss at the hands of Chu Xiu. His maidservant, Chan had been killed, and this matter had been known by the entire underworld. This had caused his reputation to plummet, and he had caused countless troubles. In the end, he had been grounded by his father. But no matter what, his father Xiahou Zhen was the patriarch of the Xiahou clan, and he still felt sorry for him. Although he ordered Xiahou Wujiang to go into seclusion to reflect, he specially found a treasure that could increase mental power. He gave Xiahou Wujiang the great sun's epiphyllum that bloomed every 100 years at noon to refine it. Finally, he stepped into the 5 Qis towards the origin realm. Only then did Xiahou Wujiang come out. But while Xiahou Wujiang's grounding was lifted, Xiahou Zhen was still worried about his son. He was worried that he would cause trouble again, so he sent a trusted martial artist to follow him. In name, it was protection, but in reality, it was surveillance. This martial artist at the unity of heaven and man realm would not listen to Xiahou Wujiang for everything. Once Xiahou Wujiang did something dangerous, this martial artist would step in to stop him. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes at Xiahou Wujiang and said indifferently, "So it's you. This time, you're not hiding in the dark and scheming, and you're attacking openly? Last time, I said that if you want to play, I'll play with you to the end. Xiahou Wujiang, you still have the nerve to say that others have no guts. In fact, you have no guts, either. You hid in the dark and didn't show up, letting a woman take the lead. After I killed her, you didn't even dare to let out a fart. Tell me, aren't you very gutless? Chu Xiu. You're courting death." Xiahou Wujiang took a step forward, and the mysterious aura around him dissipated. He looked at Chu Xiu with a ferocious killing intent. But before he could make a move, a deafening roar came from the foot of the mountain. "Chu Xiu. Today, I must kill you as a sacrifice to senior brother Heng Shan's soul in heaven." Hearing this voice, everyone present was stunned. How many people did this Chu Xiu offend? Why did everyone have a grudge against him? Chu Xiu also frowned. He felt that he seemed to be a little unlucky at this time. In the original plot, he did not know who the people who came to the Skysplit Tower this time were, but it could not be so coincidental that they were all his enemies, right? Who were the people who came this time? Chapter 348. The person who was clamoring to kill Chu Xiu was a middle-aged monk in his 40s. He wore a moon-white robe and had a tall stature. He was at the Five Chi's origin realm. At this moment, his face was filled with anger and murderous intent. His desire to kill Chu Xiu was even greater than that of Tichertsen and Xiahou Wujiang. However, the moment they saw this monk, everyone gasped and exclaimed, "It's someone from the Great Light Temple." The monks of the Great Light Temple would have a golden swastika imprint on their robes and kasaya. The outer layer was inlaid with a golden ring, representing the light of the Great Sun. Among the northern and southern Buddhist sects, in terms of power, the Great Light Temple was even greater than the Subodhi Monastery. This Chu Xiu was truly audacious to the extreme. He even dared to kill a disciple of the Great Light Temple. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "There are many people in this world who want to kill me. Who do you think you are? However, I don't think I've killed a monk from the Great Light Temple. If you want to take revenge on me, you have to find the right person." The monk who suddenly appeared was Ming Chen, the martial monk instructor of the Vajra Courtyard, one of the 6 martial courtyards of the Great Light Temple. In the past, when Chu Xiu was carrying out a mission as an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society, he had killed an old monk named Heng Shan. That old monk was a friend of Ming Chen's. Although he was not from the Great Light Temple, he was still Ming Chen's senior. Although Chu Xiu was an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society at that time, it was not up to him to choose who he wanted to kill when carrying out a mission. However, it was clear that Ming Chen had already placed the blame on Chu Xiu. When the news of Heng Shan's death first came, Ming Chen had already wanted to seek revenge on Chu Xiu. However, at that time, Chu Xiu was still an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society, and the head of the Blue Dragon Society, Bu Tiannan, had just fought with the people of the Great Light Temple. The relationship between the two parties was more sensitive, so Ming Chen was stopped by his master and had endured until today. This time, Ming Chen had cultivated to the Five Chi's origin realm and was ordered to go down the mountain to find talented disciples for the Great Light Temple. He had heard several rumors about Chu Xiu in the Jianghu and could not help but come to the Guanzhong torture room. If Tichertsen and Xiahou Wujiang came here because of the appearance of the Skirich Tower and accidentally met Chu Xiu here, then Ming Chen could be said to have deliberately come to make trouble for Chu Xiu. Ming Chen said hatefully, "Chu Xiu, have you forgotten the Yao village of the Northern Yen? In the past, you were an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society and killed countless people in the Northern Yen land. Your hands were stained with blood." Yao Nanxian was about to retire from the Jianghu, but your Blue Dragon Society did not let him go and exterminated him during the Golden Basin washing ceremony. Because my senior martial brother Heng Shan also participated in the Golden Basin washing ceremony, he was massacred by you villains. Shouldn't I seek revenge from you? In the past, Chu Xiu was an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society. This was known by many people in the Jianghu. However, they did not expect that Chu Xiu had such a glorious battle record in the past. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Yao village. You are here to seek revenge for that meddling old monk Heng Shan. What a joke. The Blue Dragon Society is just a sword in someone else's hand. It is not that the Blue Dragon Society did not want to let Yao Nanxian go, but that the person who hired the Blue Dragon Society did not want to let Yao Nanxian go. As for that old monk Heng Shan, it is even more ridiculous. The Blue Dragon Society's target was not him, but he jumped out to meddle in other people's business and died. Who can he blame? Back then, there were many people who participated in the Golden Basin washing ceremony. Why did that old monk Heng Shan die? Wasn't it because he was meddling in other people's business? When Chu Xiu said this, everyone present felt that it was very reasonable. However, to Ming Chen, Chu Xiu's words were a provocation and an insult to senior brother Heng Shan. Ming Chen released a golden aura around his body. He looked at Chu Xiu and said in a deep voice, "In the past, Master told me to consider the big picture and not to seek revenge on you. The Guardian Warrior's angry gaze is to suppress evil and slay devils. Killing one person to save 10, not to fight for revenge. But now, it seems that Master was wrong. All these years, countless innocent people have died in the hands of you, Chu Xiu. Although you are not of the demonic path, your methods are more cruel and ruthless than those martial artists of the demonic path. Today, I am killing you not only to pay tribute to senior brother Heng Shan's spirit in heaven, but also to get rid of a scourge like you for the people of the martial world. Killing one of you can save thousands of people." As soon as he finished speaking, Ming Chen did not say anything else. His body flashed with a dazzling golden light, and he threw a punch at Chu Xiu with the roar of a dragon and a tiger. The Great Light Temple's secret technique, the dragon-taming tiger fist. For others, the sky-reaching tower was still very attractive. Even Teachertsen, an elder from the Ba Mountain Sword sect, felt the same. But for Ming Chen, who came from the Great Light Temple, he did not care about the cultivation methods and treasures in the sky-reaching tower. Even if it was the sky-reaching sect of the ancient times, their heritage might not be stronger than that of the Great Light Temple. So Ming Chen did not care about the sky-reaching tower at all. This time, he came to find Chu Xiu for revenge. Moreover, when he said that he would kill Chu Xiu to get rid of the scourge of the martial world, it was not just high-sounding words, but what he really thought in his heart. Ming Chen came from the Vajra courtyard of the 6 major martial courtyards of the Great Light Temple, and the cultivation method he cultivated was the famous, Furious Vajra Heart Sutra of the Great Light Temple. After cultivating it to great success, his body became extremely strong, like the guardian Vajra of Buddhism. His eyes were angry, and he could destroy evil and kill demons. It was an extremely powerful body cultivation method. However, this cultivation method was a bit extreme. Although the Furious Vajra Heart Sutra was angry, if it was because of killing or hatred, then it would be walking on the evil path. It would stimulate one's own anger and lead to chi deviation. So to cultivate the Furious Vajra Heart Sutra, one must have the skills of a Vajra and the heart of a Buddha. Now that Ming Chen wanted to kill Chu Xiu, although the main purpose was to take revenge for Heng Shan, he himself thought that he was getting rid of the scourge of the martial world. Previously, when he wanted to kill Chu Xiu in the northern Yen, he was stopped by his master, which caused Chu Xiu to kill so many people in the martial world in the future. Now, he wanted to make sure that Chu Xiu would not be able to continue doing evil. When the people present saw that Ming Chen actually attacked directly, without any regard for the consequences, they were also stunned. They thought to themselves that the Great Light Temple was indeed the leader of the Buddhist sect, and they were extremely decisive and bold in their actions. However, this was also what they were happy to see happen. After all, Chu Xiu was currently occupying a good position. If he was really killed by Ming Chen, everyone would applaud and celebrate. Although Chu Xiu had the ability to fight against some of the weaker oneness of heaven and human realm, this did not mean that he was truly invincible in the Five Qi's origin realm. Some existences in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard and some experts who had accumulated a lot of experience in the Five Qi's origin realm could still hurt him, such as the current Ming Chen. Ming Chen was a core disciple of the Great Light Temple and the martial monk instructor of the Vajrayard. His own ability did not need to be mentioned. Based on his inheritance alone, he was more powerful than Chu Xiu. When this punch landed, the roar of a dragon and the roar of a tiger erupted. Its might was not inferior to Chu Xiu's perfect Aquarius seal. If it was Yin Luohua, he would probably have one of his fingers shattered. At this moment, the expression of Yin Luohua, who was standing at the side and watching the battle, also changed. Although he was not a frog at the bottom of a well, he was a lone cultivator after all, so he did not have much knowledge. Previously, when Chu Xiu's seal shattered one of his fingers, he was already shocked. Now that he saw Ming Chen's punch, he was still a little frightened. Today, he finally understood that things like realms did not represent combat power. Although some people's realms were weaker than his, their combat power was so terrifying that it was abnormal. At this moment, in the face of Ming Chen's punch, a cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. Along the way, he had indeed offended a lot of people in the underworld. However, those who could reach a high position all had piles of bones under their feet. When would there be an end to revenge? The simplest way was to completely wipe out the other party's lineage and kill until the other party could not find anyone to take revenge on you. Then, the grudge would be considered resolved. Chu Xiu did not want to provoke the Great Light Temple, which was one of the northern and southern Buddhist sects. He killed Heng Shan, and Ming Chen came to take revenge on him. If he killed Ming Chen now, would Ming Chen's master come to take revenge on him in the future? These were all things that could happen, but Chu Xiu did not care so much. If someone wanted to kill him, he would kill them. Some things in the underworld were sometimes so simple, and compromise had never been Chu Xiu's style. Therefore, the moment Ming Chen attacked, Chu Xiu also attacked. Moreover, he used a killing move right from the start, without holding back. With one step, Chu Xiu's murderous intent shot up into the sky. Impressively, he had already stepped into the selfless killing realm. The devil's blade of Avicii slashed out, and the black demonic aura combined with the blood-refined divine power. The devil's blade of Avicii slashed out with a trace of divinity, and the surging demonic aura and murderous intent exploded, causing the wind to howl angrily, and there was a faint sound of ghosts crying and gods howling. The power of Chu Xiu's blade shocked everyone present. Yin Luohua was rejoicing that Chu Xiu did not explode with such power just now. Otherwise, the price he had to pay would not be as simple as losing a finger. Teachertsen's expression was also solemn. This Chu Xiu's combat strength was beyond his expectations. If it were him, could he win against Chu Xiu? On the other hand, Xiahou Wujiang's expression was somewhat ugly. In the past, he had fought with Chu Xiu at the God Weapon Convention. Only a short time had passed, and this Chu Xiu's strength had skyrocketed to such an extent. Could it be that he had obtained some kind of opportunity? Unlike the others who were shocked by the power of Chu Xiu's blade, when he saw the power of Chu Xiu's blade, Ming Chen was even more determined to kill Chu Xiu. In his view, with such a murderous intent, how could a person who could cultivate demonic martial arts to such a level be a good person? He must be a demon whose hands were stained with blood. Killing Chu Xiu was rewarded with good karma. Killing people was also saving people. When the exploding golden gang chi collided with Chu Xiu's blade, suddenly the roar of dragons and tigers resounded. The demonic aura continued to roar, and bursts of violent fluctuations erupted. Chapter 349. The people of Jianghu all thought that Daoist martial artists paid the most attention to their foundations, but in reality, Buddhist martial artists paid even more attention to their foundations than Daoist martial artists. When Daoist martial artists gained enlightenment, their understanding of the state of mind was even above the accumulation of their own realm. This was the so-called, once you gain enlightenment, you will soar to the heavens. As for Buddhist martial artists, especially those from the Great Light Temple, they paid particular attention to progressing step by step. First, they would recite Buddhist scriptures to cultivate their mind, then they would train their muscles and bones, and finally, they would be taught some secret techniques of the Buddhist sect. Therefore, very few people in Jianghu would be able to see young Buddhist disciples roaming the Jianghu, and many times, the disciples of the Great Light Temple would not even appear on the Longhu leaderboard. When the young martial artists of other sects roamed the Jianghu, the young disciples of the Great Light Temple were still cultivating in the temple, training their muscles and bones. On this generation's Longhu leaderboard, the Great Light Temple even produced a Wisdom King, Zongxian, which was already considered a rare occurrence. It could only be said that Zongxian's talent was amazing. Therefore, as long as one was a disciple of the Great Light Temple who was qualified to roam the Jianghu, their strength would definitely be extraordinary. It could be said that even the most ordinary disciple would be of a much higher quality than the same-level martial artists of other sections. Ming Chen was the martial monk instructor of the Vajra institution, so he was not an ordinary disciple. Using his fist to meet the saber, in the midst of the endless golden Buddhist light and demonic qi exploding, Chu Xiu's extremely sharp saber directly tore through Ming Chen's Buddhist light, and with a loud bang, it directly chopped onto his fist. However, when the saber was about to reach his body, Ming Chen's fist bloomed with a layer of seemingly solid golden light. His entire face became extremely solemn, as if he had been possessed by Vajra. A violent clanging sound was heard, and Chu Xiu's saber seemed to have chopped onto a blunt object, almost producing sparks. Everyone present looked at Ming Chen with even more shocked gazes. This monk was actually using his physical body to forcefully resist a sixth transformation supreme-grade precious weapon. Was he still human? Xiahou Wujiang frowned and said, "The monks of the Great Light Temple are so fierce. Seventh uncle, can you beat him?" The person that Xiahou Wujiang called seventh uncle wasn't Xiahou Wujiang's real seventh uncle, and he wasn't a member of the Xiahou clan either. Instead, he was a follower of the Xiahou clan and one of Xiahou Zhen's trusted subordinates. He was ranked seventh among his brothers, so he was called seventh uncle. Upon hearing this, seventh uncle said faintly, "That monk cultivates the Great Light Temple's secret technique, the Furious Eyes Vajra Heart Sutra. It seems that he has already cultivated it to the initial realm. He can condense the Vajra form to subdue demons and slay evil. It's not strange for him to be able to resist a sixth transformation precious weapon with his physical body." However, even though he had cultivated his physical body to this level, he couldn't train his internal organs to the point where they were impervious to swords and spears. There were many ways to kill him. As for me, Wu Jiang, you underestimate your seventh uncle too much. No matter what, I have stepped into the realm of oneness of heaven and man for so many years, and I have received your father's guidance. How could I lose to a monk who only has 5 qis collecting in origin? Not to mention the fact that he has only cultivated the guardian deity form. Even if he had cultivated the wisdom deity form, he would still not be able to withstand my 13 soul-stealing arrows. I will definitely be able to kill him within 7 arrows. Xiahou Wujiang nodded, not feeling that his seventh uncle was bragging. There were a total of 9 retainers by his father's side, all of whom were loyal to Xiahou Zhen. They were his father's true confidants, and they were even more reliable than the people in the Xiahou clan. Therefore, these people were all carefully selected. Not a single one of them was simple, and they were not inferior to the martial artists of those big sections. At this moment, Chu Xiu hadn't expected that Ming Chen's physical body would actually be so monstrous because his full-force attack from the heavenly demon dance had actually been blocked by Ming Chen. Just as Chu Xiu was about to withdraw his saber and retreat, Ming Chen turned his fists into palms, put his palms together, and clamped down on Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance. A scorching Buddhist gang chi followed the heavenly demon dance and blasted directly at Chu Xiu. Moreover, this was not the end. Ming Chen suddenly opened his mouth, and a deafening Buddhist roar came out. It was like a thunderclap, and the others could not help but cover their ears. Great Light Temple's secret technique, 9 Transformation Lion's Roar, Zhen Formula. As soon as the lion's roar was released, Ming Chen's feet moved, and his body was like a divine dragon swinging its tail. With a powerful gang chi, he kicked at Chu Xiu. The power that erupted at this moment was simply terrifying. From Ming Chen clamping down on Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance and using his inner strength to counter it, to him using the 9 Transformation Lion's Roar, and finally kicking at Chu Xiu, this series of changes was simply too much for the eyes to take in. It was extremely fast, and it shocked everyone the strength of the Great Light Temple's martial artists. There was no need to mention Chu Xiu's strength. He was ranked 6th on the Longhu leaderboard, and he had the battle record of killing a oneness of heaven and man realm martial artist. He was definitely a famous figure in the underworld. Moreover, this Ming Chen was a nobody. At the very least, no one present had heard of his name. In the end, such a nameless person was able to force Chu Xiu to a dead end in a fight with him. The Great Light Temple's ability could be seen clearly. Of course, everyone present thought that Ming Chen had forced Chu Xiu to a dead end, but Chu Xiu did not think so. Ming Chen lived up to his name as the martial monk instructor of the Great Light Temple. He had a wealth of battle experience, and every martial art technique he used could be said to be extremely proficient. Even when Chu Xiu used the heaven sun gazing at air to observe, he could not see any flaws. Of course, Chu Xiu's sun gazing at air was only at the entry level. If he could cultivate it to a small success level, he might be able to see more things, and even predict his opponent's attack trajectory. However, he could not find any flaws at the moment. However, this was not important. Chu Xiu had never been someone who relied on expecting his opponent to make a mistake to turn the tables. He wanted to see if it was Ming Chen who had forced him to a dead end, or if it was he who had forced Ming Chen to a dead end. The moment Ming Chen unleashed his series of moves, Chu Xiu also moved. The Buddha light that came from the heavenly demon dance was directly absorbed into Chu Xiu's body, but it was immediately suppressed by his inner lion seal. The glazed gold thread goo in his body shone brightly, melting away the Buddha's vital qi. At the same time, Chu Xiu put away his saber and formed a seal. His hands formed 2 completely different seals. The fingers on his left hand formed a seal, forming the outer lion seal. In an instant, the sound of thunder exploded, but it was loud enough to be heard. The sonorous and thunderous sound of thunder seemed to be solid as it blasted towards Ming Chen. His right hand formed a fist seal, forming the great SwordWill seal. When the seal fell, it was like a Vajra suppressing a demon. With an unparalleled power, it directly collided with Ming Chen's foot. Seeing this scene, Ming Chen's eyes revealed a look of shock. Chu Xiu's outer lion seal was too similar to the Great Light Temple's 9 Transformations Lion Roar. In fact, if Ming Chen had not cultivated the 9 Transformations Lion Roar, he would have even thought that Chu Xiu had secretly learned the Great Light Temple's cultivation method. It was still unclear which was stronger between the outer lion seal and the 9 Transformations Lion Roar, but Chu Xiu's mental strength was much stronger than Ming Chen's. When the outer lion seal appeared, the powerful power of loud enough to be heard directly suppressed the 9 Transformations Lion Roar's sound waves. It resounded in Ming Chen's ears, causing him to groan. His body slowed down, and the vital qi around him was slightly dispersed by the outer lion seal. At this moment, Chu Xiu's great SwordWill seal collided with Ming Chen's foot. With a loud bang, Ming Chen's figure was directly sent flying by Chu Xiu. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. They could not figure out what was going on. Ming Chen was a master of the Great Light Temple, and Chu Xiu's actions were definitely not good. The cruel and ruthless demonic saber should have been the martial arts used by Chu Xiu, but now he was using Buddhist martial arts to fight Buddhist martial arts and sent Ming Chen flying. What was this? No matter how you looked at it, it was ironic. Chu Xiu pressed forward, his hand forming a perfect Aquarius seal. He directly pressed the seal down on Ming Chen, who had not yet landed on the ground. An unparalleled brilliance bloomed, making Chu Xiu look like an eminent monk of the Great Light Temple. Ming Chen roared angrily, and both his hands were like a demon subduing pestle. Vajra demon subduing pestle. There was a violent explosion of Gang Qi, and Ming Chen was directly smashed into the ground by Chu Xiu. Even his calves were submerged in the ground. Although his arms were still surrounded by the golden Buddhist light, his hands could not help but tremble. It was true that Ming Chen's accumulation was deep, but Chu Xiu's powerful cultivation method of combining Taoism, Buddhism, and demon was even more profound than Ming Chen's. The furious Vajra Heart Sutra had made Ming Chen's body incomparably strong, so strong that he could resist Chu Xiu's demonic dance. However, it didn't mean that his entire body had been trained to be like an Iron Man. The shock to his internal organs caused by the powerful force could still cause him a certain amount of damage. Now Chu Xiu was like this, directly crushing Ming Chen with absolute power. After the perfect Aquarius seal, Chu Xiu formed a complicated seal with both hands. 5 rays of light, like the rotation of the great sun, grew endlessly and crushed toward Ming Chen. Sun will seal. The power of the 5 elements rotated endlessly, and when it came crashing down, even if Ming Chen condensed the Vajra form to resist, the sun will seal still blasted him several feet into the ground. Seeing that Ming Chen had been suppressed, Chu Xiu turned around and blasted out a punch. Boundless killing intent seemed to condense into a substance. Forgetting heaven and forgetting self, destroying heaven and forgetting self killing fist. Boundless killing intent soared into the sky. Ming Chen also chanted the name of Buddha, and his eyes were wide open, like the angry eyes of a Vajra. His right arm formed the demon subduing seal, and when the seal fell, it collided with Chu Xiu's destroying heaven and forgetting self-killing fist. Suddenly, an earth-shattering sound erupted. The powerful force penetrated through his bones, and Ming Chen's figure retreated step by step. Every step he took caused the ground to crack. At this time, his arm was already twisted, and a stream of blood flowed from his mouth. Looking at Chu Xiu, Ming Chen's eyes showed a touch of regret. He did not regret coming to find trouble with Chu Xiu at this time and fighting to the death with Chu Xiu, but regretted that he did not persist in the past and kill Chu Xiu before he grew to this level. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Ming Chen chanted the name of Buddha, and traces of blood and qi integrated into the Buddha's light around him. Everyone could see that Ming Chen was ready to fight with his life. It seemed that he was indeed pushed to the extreme by Chu Xiu. If he did not fight with his life, he could only wait for death. However, in the field, Xiahou Wujiang, who was watching the battle, suddenly said coldly, "Seventh uncle, when this monk fights with his life, you also attack. Use the 13 soul-stealing arrows to kill Chu Xiu." Chapter 350. Xiahou Wujiang's words made seventh uncle frown. "Wujiang, sneak attacks aren't nice to talk about. Once I make a move, I'll lose not only my reputation, but also yours. I don't care about my reputation. After all, I'm just a nameless person in Jianghu and I can afford to lose. However, you and Chu Xiu are both elites of the Dragon and Tiger list. You can defeat him head-on or plot against him in secret. However, if you launch a sneak attack from behind, your reputation will plummet. Besides, Chu Xiu has the Guanzhong torture room behind him, and he's now a torturer. I'm afraid it won't be so easy to deal with Guan Siyu if I sneak attack him." Xiahou Wujiang's face showed a hint of killing intent. Reputation? My reputation has been ruined since Chu Xiu killed Chan. What reputation do I need? In the pugilistic world, since ancient times, the winner is the king, and the loser is the thief. Now that I have sneak attacked and killed Chu Xiu, it is indeed damaging my reputation, but after a few years, Chu Xiu will be completely forgotten by the pugilistic world. At that time, who will remember these things? As for the Guanzhong torture room, seventh uncle, don't worry. Father told me last time that our Xiahou family doesn't need to worry about offending the Guanzhong torture room. The key is whether the offense is worth it. Last time I made a move against Chu Xiu, I've already made a death feud with Chu Xiu. He's now a torturer, and no one knows whether he'll become the master of the Guanzhong torture room in the future. Killing Chu Xiu will only offend the Guanzhong torture room now, but keeping Chu Xiu alive will make our Xiahou family always oppose the Guanzhong torture room. Anyway, the result is the same, so it's better to get rid of Chu Xiu now. Previously, Xiahou had said that Xiahou Wujiang was good at everything. His only shortcoming was that he was too arrogant and conceited, looking down on everything. Last time, Xiahou Wujiang had suffered a big loss at the hands of Chu Xiu and was locked up in the ancestral hall by Xiahou to reflect. Xiahou Wujiang still remembered this lesson, and his character changed a lot. He killed when he needed to, and his character became much more decisive. Seventh uncle thought about it and finally nodded. He was a right-hand man of the Xiahou clan, but he was only loyal to Xiahou. This time, Xiahou sent him to protect Xiahou Wujiang with the intention of supervising him. If Xiahou Wujiang went too far, he naturally didn't have to obey his orders. On the contrary, he had to restrain him. But now, what Xiahou Wujiang said was reasonable and well-grounded, and he had even thought through the benefits and consequences of killing Chu Xiu, so he had no reason to refuse. Seventh uncle took out a strange box from the bag on his back. The box was not too big, only the length of an arm. As seventh uncle pressed back and forth on the box a few times, the strange box's mechanism changed and stretched back and forth. In the blink of an eye, the iron box turned into a huge bow half the size of a person. It was completely cast from steel and exuded a strange metallic beauty. This bow only had 13 arrows, which were the strongest 13 arrows condensed from seventh uncle's lifetime cultivation. He could only shoot 13 arrows when he was in the innate realm, and when he reached the unity of heaven and man realm, he could still only shoot 13 arrows. These 13 arrows were soul-stealing and soul-chasing. If he couldn't kill others, others would want to kill him. It was a rather extreme martial art. At this time, seventh uncle was holding the bow, but he didn't make a move. He had even decided to kill Chu Xiu, but he didn't reveal even a trace of killing intent. The soul-chasing and soul-stealing arrow could only be felt at the moment it was shot. At this time, in the field, Ming Chen had already begun to burn his qi and blood to fight for his life. Although the Heart Sutra of the Furious Vajra was a top body-refining technique in the Great Light Temple, its side effects were not ordinary. Previously, when Ming Chen killed Chu Xiu, he was hinting in his heart that he killed Chu Xiu for the sake of ridding the Jianghu of evil, so that his killing intent and hatred wouldn't lead to anger. However, after fighting for so long, Ming Chen still had anger in him. At this time, Ming Chen's rational choice would have been to escape immediately after feeling that he was no match for Chu Xiu. The Great Light Temple had many secret techniques and trump cards. If Ming Chen wanted to escape, as long as he paid a price, Chu Xiu might not be able to catch up to him. However, Ming Chen's heart was already occupied by anger, and his rationality was gradually swallowed up. He swore that he would not rest until he killed Chu Xiu. The scarlet blood qi seeped into the golden gang qi around Ming Chen's body, appearing somewhat evil. Ming Chen did not have a saber in his hand, but the blood qi was mixed with the golden gang qi and condensed into a long saber that was almost solid. With one slash, the Vajra avatar turned into the Azura avatar, and the merciful saber turned into the Azura slash. The Vajra's fury had turned into the Azura's fury, and the power of this slash was close to being possessed by demons. Chu Xiu waved his hand, and the heavenly demon dance that had fallen to the ground was once again held in Chu Xiu's hand. A powerful demonic aura swept over, and Chu Xiu's entire body was already shrouded by endless demonic aura and murderous intent. As he slashed with his saber, everyone seemed to have seen 3 layers of changes. In reality, they were not wrong. Chu Xiu had already comprehended the 3 blades of Avicii to the extreme, and this slash contained the power of the 3 blades. It was as if the gates of hell had opened, and a ghostly god was slashing down with a saber. It was extremely terrifying. At this moment, 7th Uncle, who was standing in the distance, moved. His strange giant bow and arrow seemed to have completed the series of actions of raising the bow, loading the arrow, and pulling the bowstring in an instant. To outsiders, it was like a series of afterimages. An ordinary unity of heaven and man realm martial artists' Gang Chi was already strong enough. When they attacked, their Gang Chi danced, and their aura was extraordinary. However, 7th Uncle was different. The aura around his body was restrained to the extreme, and not even the slightest bit of Gang Chi was emitted. All the power and killing intent in his body were condensed in that arrow, causing the arrow to faintly emit a dark divine glow. The moment 7th Uncle aimed the arrow at Chu Xiu, Chu Xiu felt his entire body turn cold, as if he had been targeted by something. At this moment, he was still in the state of the selfless killer realm, so he was abnormally sensitive to the surrounding killing intent. Almost instantly, he understood what was going on. At the same time, Chu Xiu displayed the heaven's sun gazing at air. In his eyes, all the power around 7th Uncle's body was condensed in a single point on that arrow. Outsiders could not see it, but under the state of the heaven's sun gazing at air, the power condensed on the arrow was simply terrifying. This 7th Uncle was absolutely one of the top unity of heaven and man realm martial artists that Chu Xiu had encountered. He was even stronger than Feng Wuling in the past. Now that Chu Xiu had drawn his saber, and Ming Chen's Azura slash was already nearing him, Chu Xiu could choose to continue attacking. However, the result would be that he would have to face the sneak attack of 7th Uncle's arrow. Even Chu Xiu wasn't sure if he could block Ming Chen's Azura slash or if he could also block 7th Uncle's arrow. But now, if Chu Xiu withdrew his saber and retreated, then he would inevitably suffer a certain degree of backlash. He would also attract a pincer attack from 2 people, and he would no longer be able to maintain his peak state. If that happened, then Chu Xiu would have already lost half the battle for Skysplit Tower. At this moment, 7th Uncle's soul-stealing 13 arrows had already been shot. The arrow made a thunderous explosion as it left the bowstring. It had already flown for some time when a sonic boom suddenly rang out. The arrow was wrapped in a layer of black aura, and its speed was extremely fast. It chased after Chu Xiu's soul and soul, not giving Chu Xiu any time to think. At this time, Chu Xiu didn't have time to think. He didn't want to put himself in danger, so he could only temporarily let go of the things in Skysplit Tower. However, just as Chu Xiu was about to withdraw his saber and retreat, a clear voice suddenly rang out. "Brother Chu. I've come to help you." As the voice fell, a figure dressed in white leaped up from the foot of the mountain. The halberd in his hand slashed down, and a crimson aura stained the halberd. It was like a blood moon in the sky, and it collided with 7th Uncle's soul-stealing arrow, causing a loud explosion. The figure dressed in white was forced back 3 steps, but 7th Uncle's arrow also exploded under this powerful halberd strike. Little Marquis Wen Lu Fengxian. The person who had suddenly appeared was Lu Fengxian, who had been roaming around West Chu for a long time. At this time, Lu Fengxian had also reached the 5 Qis unification realm, and her strength wasn't inferior to Chu Xiu's. She wasn't much weaker than 7th Uncle, who was at the unity of the world realm. With Lu Fengxian helping to block 7th Uncle, Chu Xiu's saber intent, which had just been about to withdraw, became even fiercer as it slashed towards Ming Chen. Under the surging demonic qi, it swallowed the heavens and earth. Even Ming Chen's Azura slash was extinguished by that saber strike. As the saber fell, Ming Chen was sent flying, and a hideous wound appeared on his chest. With his qi and blood injured, the strength of his body also decreased. Just now, he could still use his body to block Chu Xiu's saber strike, but now he was heavily injured by Chu Xiu. Seeing the heavily injured Ming Chen, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a surging killing intent. Since he had already made his move, there was no need to hesitate. Since he had already heavily injured Ming Chen, how could he hope to bury the hatchet? Taking a step forward, Chu Xiu arrived in front of Ming Chen in an instant. At the same time, his hands formed the great UnparalleledSwordWill seal, which fell one seal after another. At the beginning, Ming Chen was still able to resist, but in the end, every time Chu Xiu's seal fell, Ming Chen would spit out a mouthful of blood, looking extremely miserable. At this time, the seventh uncle raised the giant bow in his hand again, but at this time, two people came up the mountain one after another. It was actually Mo-Tianlin and Xia Xiaolu. The two of them also stood beside Lu Fengxian, staring at the seventh uncle like a tiger watching its prey. This caused the seventh uncle to hesitate for a moment, but in the end, he still put down the giant bow in his hand. Lu Fengxian's previous attack had already surprised the seventh uncle, but she was actually able to receive his arrow without any effort. As for Xia Xiaolu and Mo-Tianlin, he was acquainted with them. Both of their backgrounds were not low. If he were to injure them, things would become complicated. At this time, in the battlefield, without the seventh uncle's interference, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a horrifying killing intent. Looking at Ming Chen, whose aura had already reached the extreme, Chu Xiu's fist fell, and his killing intent condensed. Heaven extinguishing, earth annihilating, oblivion killing fist. The scarlet fist intent seemed to condense into a solid substance, and it landed on Ming Chen's chest, immediately causing his chest to cave in, making a muffled sound. Ming Chen's eyes showed a hint of unwillingness, and a large amount of blood flowed from his mouth, but his body had already fallen to the ground. Although Chu Xiu's punch had not been able to destroy his physical body, it had already shattered his heart and internal organs. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled Sword Will YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.